Southwest England. There's a Met Office yellow warning in place. Not much rain getting to eastern England until tomorrow. And the rain should be clearing from Northern Ireland. As it does, it'll turn a bit chilly, but for most of us, temperatures actually rising through the night. We start the weekend in double digits. So a mild but soggy Saturday morning. Still
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Happy Friday, everybody. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Just when you think Harry couldn't get any more stupid, he's gone and wound up the Taliban. He revealed he killed 25 jihadis. Now the Taliban are accusing him of war crimes. And mark my words, his idiotic revelations will make us all less safe on the streets. He's also committed the ultimate betrayal of our dear Queen, revealing what he whispered into her barely warm ear, just moments after she passed away. Where's the dignity in all of that, Harry? He also claimed that King Charles used to joke about not being his real father. It's shocking stuff. In other news, how much do you think it costs to deport a Channel migrant? I can tell you, it turns out it's a lot less than putting them up in 4-star hotels with bed and board for months on end before giving them social housing and allowing them to access our public services. I'll reveal all later this hour. Plus, Rail Union Baron Mick Lynch has said train staff could work to rule if new anti-strike legislation is brought in. How will this actually affect the railways? New figures also reveal that just 0.5% of people in England and Wales identify as transgender. So, why are we letting such a small percentage of our population dictate laws, the curriculum, and some would argue, women's safety? I've got all of this and much, much more coming your way. I want to hear from you today. As ever, ladies and gentlemen, get yourself on the telly. What angers you most about Harry's book? Is it the national security threat? Is it his disrespect to our dear Queen? Let me know. Get yourself on the telly. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But now, here's your headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 3. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Prince Harry's revealed he found out his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had died via a news website and not from his family. It's among a number of revelations from his memoir Spare, including allegations his brother Prince William attacked him. The Duke of Sussex also claims he killed 25 Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. The admissions being condemned by a senior Taliban leader who's taken to Twitter saying they weren't chess pieces, they were humans. Former royal correspondent Charles Ray told us the book could be the end of Harry's relationship with the royal family.
These are machine gun revelations and accusations, and it is staggering that he's come out with all this stuff. I mean, to a point of being disgusting with some of the revelations. I don't believe that Harry's ever going to be forgiven for doing what he's done with this book. I mean, the documentaries and the Oprah Winfrey were bad enough, but this book is way out there, really is.
The Prime Minister's invited union leaders representing striking workers to meet with him on Monday. Rishi Sunak says he hopes for a grown-up conversation about what's affordable. It comes as passengers experience the fourth consecutive day of train strikes over jobs, pay and conditions. Only 20% of services are operating as normal. Mr Sunak says the government will try and ensure some services continue during strike action.
We're going to bring forward new laws in common with countries like France, Italy, Spain and others that ensure that we have minimum levels of safety in critical areas like fire, like ambulance, so that even when strikes are going on, you know that your health will be protected. I think that's entirely reasonable, and that's what our new laws will do.
Meanwhile, RMT's General Secretary Mick Lynch says he doesn't think potential new laws will work.
They've also lost the argument on the existing anti-trade union laws because every union is defeating them by having mass ballots. They want to make the action that comes out of those ballots virtually illegal. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think they understand what they're doing. They keep quoting what goes on in France and Spain and all the rest of the world. These laws have never been enforced in those countries, and they're not enacted in the same way that Grant Shapps is trying to bring in.
Flu cases in England's hospitals are continuing to rise. That as ambulance handover delays hit a record high. Just over 40% of patients waited more than half an hour to be transferred to A&E. An average of just over 5,000 flu patients were in hospital last week. That's up 47% on the previous week. It comes amid a wave of strikes across the health sector. The Royal College of Nursing, though, says their members will now consider a 10% pay rise instead of the 19% originally demanded. Health Secretary Steve Barclay says he's keen for an agreement to be reached.
Well, I'm keen to have dialogue with Pat Cullen and the RCN. I wrote to them last week looking at the coming year, at the pressures from inflation and cost of living, how we could work together to make any settlement more affordable in terms of looking at what productivity opportunities there are, what efficiency opportunities there are, because there's common ground in recognising that the NHS is under pressure and we need to respond to that.
The average house price in the UK fell for a fourth consecutive month in December. Last month's prices dropped by 1.5% compared to November, which means the average house price is now just over £281,000. Halifax, though, says uncertainty over the cost of living crisis and rising interest rates are slowing the housing market. Shell will pay around £1.7 billion in UK and EU windfall taxes for the final quarter of last year. The oil giant says it'll face a hit to earnings because of the increased UK energy profits levy and additional EU taxes. In October, bosses at the firm had said they hadn't paid any UK windfall taxes because of heavy investment in the North Sea. Former Chelsea striker and manager Gianluca Vialli has died from pancreatic cancer at the age of 58. Vialli earned 59 caps for Italy and won the Champions League with Juventus before joining Chelsea in 1996. He was the first Italian to take charge of a Premier League side, becoming the Blues manager in 1998. And the number of independent bookshops in the UK and Ireland has reached a 10-year high. The Booksellers Association says the increase is down to an astonishing number of new books coming out during the pandemic. It's the sixth consecutive year the number of bookshops has increased. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Patrick.
Right, well, it can't have escaped your notice that a stream of sensational claims and accusations from Prince Harry's autobiography, Spare, have now been leaked. The book outlines grievances and bitterness in the royal family, such as a claim that he and Prince William urged their father not to marry Camilla. The Duke of Sussex has also revealed the last words he spoke to the late Queen Elizabeth, and I think this is incredibly disrespectful, personally. I don't know about what you think, but really. Apparently, he whispered that he hoped that she was happy and that she was with his grandfather. Of course, that stuff is not disrespectful, but I think revealing what you've just whispered into your dead grandma's ears on her deathbed, I think is pretty shocking stuff. He's also said that he learnt of her death from the BBC News website. We'll have a little bit more detail on that and some insight. Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace have both said they will not comment, but arguably the bigger thing for you and me and ordinary people out walking the streets is the reaction, I think, from the Taliban and potentially Islamist extremists everywhere in relation to what he said about killing 25 members of the Taliban. That has caused a backlash. Now, normally I would not, of course, be annoyed at the Taliban being annoyed, but if that does impact on public safety generally, I suspect that's a little bit rum. Get your views coming in. I want to know what annoys you most about what you found out so far from Prince Harry's book, Spare. GBviews at gbnews.uk. But joining me now is GB News' royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Cameron, shall we start with the Taliban?
Yeah, might as well. There's a lot to get through. Yes, so Prince Harry claims that on his second tour of Afghanistan, he killed 25 Taliban insurgents, which has caused a bit of an uproar, let's be honest, in various circles online and elsewhere. I spoke to a former army major a couple of hours ago, and Major Chris Hunter, and he told me that he's basically betrayed the army, Prince Harry, by effectively boasting about the number of kills he had in Afghanistan. Yeah. It is, in modern technology, possible to find out how many kills they had on any given mission, but it's something you would talk about in private with your comrades. It's not something you would, according to the major who I spoke to, would speak about publicly. He said it's very distasteful that Prince Harry chose to do that. Then, of course, we have the fact that the Taliban, that one of the Taliban leaders has come out and said they weren't pieces on a chessboard, which is what Prince Harry said he referred to the Taliban fighters as. They were pieces on a chessboard that I needed to remove rather than human beings. And the Taliban accused Prince Harry of war crimes and said that they were human beings, not pieces on a chessboard. And this raises a huge question about Prince Harry's security, the royal family security, and indeed any serving British soldier, because it unfortunately leads the way to perhaps a bit of an issue with
absolutely
extremism.
100%. I first read it and I thought maybe he's doing it as a desperate bid to try to get his own security back. If he is, he's gone a really ridiculous way about it. I think it puts military personnel at massive risk, even more risk. I think it puts ordinary members of the public at even more risk. We do not need to enrage people who support the Taliban any more than, frankly, we already have. I've already got emails coming in from former service personnel, people claiming to be former service personnel. I will go to those shortly. I value your input, I think, on this more than pretty much most topics that I cover, actually. If you were in our armed forces or are in our armed forces, what do you make of Harry's revelations about him killing 25 members of the Taliban? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Also some revelations, Cameron, about the way that he found out about our Queen's death.
Yes, so according to an extract published by the Daily Mail, Prince Harry claims that he found out that the Queen had died via the BBC News website. Now, what we do know, thinking back to my recollections of that day, we were briefed, I was briefed, that Harry and Meghan would be going up to Balmoral with Prince William, the Earl and Countess of Wessex, etc., on a chartered RAF flight from Norfolk to Aberdeen, to then drive to Aberdeen to be with the Queen. Yeah. Then we were kind of briefed again in a very confused way that, oh no, it's only Harry going up with the rest of the royal family. Then the Queen died and we found out about that. But what we now know is that the plane took off without Prince Harry. Prince Harry had to make his own way up there. So presumably, this is just speculation, but presumably he must have been told. In fact, he said that he, in one of the other extracts, that he was given a phone call saying that the Queen was dying and he needed to get up to Scotland. And so he must have been told that she was dying, but by the time he landed, that's when the notification came up, because clearly you don't have signal on a plane.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of speculation as to whether or not the reason why he wasn't on that first plane is because he wanted to travel with Meghan, and Meghan potentially was told not to go there. We'll have to wait and see for more detail on that. But Cameron, thank you very much. I know that you're going to be in throughout the course of this show reacting to all these latest revelations, and I really appreciate you being on right at the very top, as indeed you should be, of course. GBNews' royal reporter Cameron Walker there. Joining us now is another royal reporter, Jenny Bond, for a little bit more comment on all of this, I think. Jenny, later on in the show, I'm going to be talking to former serving service personnel as well, about the specifics about the national security threat, or indeed the threat to himself and our royal family that Harry may have caused as a result of this. So I'm going to park that for now and talk to you a little bit about whether or not you think it's disrespectful that he's revealed the words that he whispered into our recently dead Queen's ear on her deathbed.
Well, I don't think it's the worst thing in the book by any means. It is very personal, and one would have thought it would be very private. But then he's revealed an awful lot of very personal and private things throughout this book. I mean, from his frostbite on his todger, as he calls it, to how he lost his virginity, and a whole lot else. I think what we're seeing here is Harry unleashed, Harry unfiltered, and Harry without guidance, taking control of his own narrative. And it's not gone too smoothly.
No, it's not gone too smoothly. It may be an indication as to why he did need to be kept within the firm, and why they maybe were quite worried about him going it alone, because this is the kind of tosh that you get. Now, I am just raising this because it's out there in the public domain. Harry apparently does say that King Charles used to joke about whether or not he was his father. Your views on that?
I think we need to see the absolute full context of that remark. He was with someone at a hospital or something, wasn't he? We need to see the full context. I think, to be charitable to Charles, he was just making a joke, which was not well thought through. Clearly, Harry knew the rumours about James Hewitt, and so did Charles. I mean, it's long been proved that there's absolute nonsense. Harry's a Spencer through and through. That's why he's got the red hair. And James Hewitt hadn't even met Diana by the time Harry was born. But nevertheless, it's obviously hit deep, hit hard on Harry. Everything has. I mean, the very fact that he was born second in that family, second in line, seems to have upset him from the very start. I mean, when he had a smaller bedroom at Balmoral Castle. I mean, in this day and age, when we're all trying to heat our houses and get to hospitals or whatever, to complain that you had a smaller bedroom in your grandmother's sprawling castle in Scotland, it's not great, is it?
No, exactly. Or that Camilla, and I did find this quite funny, to be fair, the idea that Camilla turned his room into a wardrobe the second he moved out. I think a lot of people who've just gone off to university can relate to that, can't they? It is not exactly the crime of the century. I do just want to say, though, by the way, and it's rare that people will hear a defence of Prince Harry from me on this particular show, but I think if my dad was joking, even if it was a joke about my paternity, I think that even if it was just in order to defend my mother and her honour, I would feel incredibly hurt about that. In fact, I think it's a bit disgusting. But we'll move on from that now and just talk about the reason potentially why he had to, in his views, find out about the Queen's death via a news website. Shouldn't he have been on the same plane as Prince William?
Yeah, but obviously there seems to have been a bust-up about whether Meghan could go or not. You know, they are sort of stuck together like glue, and he was offended that his wife was not invited to go up there, but then they smoothed the water by saying Catherine wasn't going either because she was going to pick up the kids from school, and so it was going to be OK. But by that time, the plane had left. That's, as I understand, the sequence of events. But Harry will find offence, it seems, in almost anything and everything. Shot through the whole book is the idea that he has been treated second class because he was born second, and that William... I do have a bit of sympathy for him in this, actually, that William gets away with stuff that Harry can't and didn't. Harry always got the flack for being the one who was out at the nightclubs and a bit dishevelled and a bit drunk, tipping himself out of a nightclub and then punching a paparazzi. Well, William misbehaved quite badly. Well, misbehaved, he had similar fun in nightclubs, but he didn't get caught. And I think it's probably true that William and Catherine probably approved the Nazi uniform or didn't see anything wrong with it, as Harry alleges. That may well be the case as well. But who got the blame? Harry.
Yeah, but I get that, but I think there's a certain irony there, because I think one of the things that made Harry most popular was this idea of him as a bit of a party animal and a bit of a Jack the Lad, actually. I think, in fact, that's one of the reasons why some people now are a bit against him, because they think he's changed. So fundamentally, I think there's something quite endearing about the idea this guy used to go out and get on it a bit, to be honest with you. But I will return just quickly with you to the Taliban comments. I know I've got military experts on that later. My inbox is filling up with people who've got very strong views about Prince Harry and the potential national security threat that he may or may not have caused as a result of enraging the Taliban. Rarely one would imagine that Prince Harry manages to unite both, you could argue, some right-wing media and indeed the Taliban in their dislike of him. But he's managed to do that. It's a page-turner, you have to say. But when it comes to his revelations there, is he doing it just to try to get his own security back, do you think?
I shouldn't have thought it was that. No, I think it's part of his sort of therapy way of looking at things, that he says, you know, he's not ashamed of it, he's not proud of it. It's a number, and a number that he recognises is important to acknowledge. A lot of what he says in the interviews, I'm not sure about the book, seems to be therapy speak to me. And I think that's part of it. I mean, incredibly unwise, a huge own goal. And you're right, this is the top line, I think, almost of the whole book.
Yeah, it is. Look, thank you very, very much, as ever. Great to have you on. That's Jenny Bond, royal commentator, just providing a bit of colour to some of these revelations, just to hit you with a few of them. Yes, he killed 25 members of the Taliban, allegedly. Does this endanger you and me and other people on the streets of Britain? What he revealed, whispered in the Queen's ear on her deathbed, Charles joking about him not being his father. There's a lot to get stuck into here. Loads of you have been getting in touch. I will go to your views shortly. Get yourself on the telly, GBViews at gbnews.uk. When I come back there, we're moving away from old Harry. Train services across the country ground to a halt today. Just 20% of services are running, but I'm moving it on from the usual strike line, which we're all absolutely bored to the back teeth of, because Mick Lynch has said that now train workers might work to rule. What does this mean? Well, potentially no overtime. How do the trains work? They work a lot based on overtime. What does this mean going forward? I've got all that coming your way. Oh, and also, how much do you think it costs to deport a Channel migrant? I will reveal all after the weather.
Good evening. Many of us have had a dry Friday, but the first weekend of the year will be dominated by showers. Lots of showers, often heavy, coming through on a fairly gusty wind, and it'll start to turn a little cooler as well. Pretty mild tonight, but we're kind of between weather systems, or have been through the day, which is why most of us have been dry. But these weather fronts now edging in from the west are bringing wet conditions. Some quite heavy rain moving across Northern Ireland into Scotland, and particularly for South Wales and South West England. That heavy rain through the early hours could cause a few problems, so we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. Much of eastern England will stay dry overnight, and Northern Ireland will turn dry after midnight. Temperatures actually rising in many places through the night. We start the weekend in double digits. We also start with a fair bit of rain around. Still some heavy rain for Wales and southwest England, especially first thing. That rain will move eastwards, so eventually turning up across East Anglia and the southeast during the morning, and then head out into the North Sea. It may linger across the easternmost parts of England and Scotland until around dusk. It'll be followed by drier, brighter weather for a time, and then the showers get going. Lots of heavy showers zipping through on that gusty wind come the afternoon. Temperatures actually dropping a little through the afternoon as well, so feeling cooler than it has done, especially with the wind, and especially if you get caught in a downpour, of which there will be plenty more to come through Saturday evening. A showery night. It gets very windy once more in the north of Scotland. And that leads into a blustery, gusty day on Sunday, with further heavy showers to come, particularly for Wales and southern England. Could be quite a wet day for parts of the southeast. Northeast England, southern Scotland, northeastern Scotland may not see too many showers, actually. So here, by and large, it could be a mostly dry day. And there will be sunny spells elsewhere between the showers, but those showers will keep coming on that gusty wind. Temperatures down close to average, but feeling cooler with the wind.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Now, just before we do move on to those rail strikes, just a couple of quick emails for you, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Lots of you getting in touch about the Prince Harry revelations. I've been asking you what annoys you most about what we know so far. Is it the fact that he's potentially put us all in danger by revealing that he killed 25 members of the Taliban? The Taliban have come out against it, obviously they have, but not really a great thing, is it, enraging the terrorists? The Queen's deathbed, he revealed what he whispered into her recently dead ear. Is that a betrayal of our Queen's privacy? Also, as well, Charles's dad jokes as well, for want of a better phrase. Apparently Charles was joking about whether or not he was his dad. I've been asking members of our armed services to get in touch with us and let us know what they think about Prince Harry, and Graham has. Graham just calls him a complete plonker, to be fair. But also, we've got Jack on, who says he's a veteran, Harry is an embarrassment, he's put people in danger, and it's not good. That's Jack's view. Right, we're moving on now from that for a little bit. We'll be dipping in and out of it, as you can imagine, throughout the course of this show. But moving on, the rail network ground to a halt again today in another wave of industrial action by the RMT union. Only 20% of services have been running during this 48-hour walkout, but the government's now planning on introducing legislation to ensure a minimum service level is kept at all times on essential industries. But as Mick Lynch actually has highlighted, this may well not be a silver bullet. In fact, far from it, because supposedly now we could have work to rule. And Paul Hawkins is with us, GB News' national reporter. Paul, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Good stuff. Paul, yeah, this work to rule stuff, frankly, could be worse for us, couldn't it, than the strike action maybe that we've got in a minute. Do you want to just talk us through what's been going on? What are the latest developments on the strikes?
Yeah, you've kind of put them in a nutshell there, to be honest, Patrick. Look, it's day 4 of this week's industrial action. This is the second walkout by the RMT, a 48-hour walkout. So today and tomorrow. Yesterday we had ASLEF, they're the train drivers union, their strike, and then before that we had 2 other days of the RMT. Of RMT action. Now, the government wants to introduce this legislation, these anti-strike laws, which effectively for rail, fire and rail services would introduce a minimum level of service. We don't know what would be the exact definition of that. The government say they will consult, they'll introduce primary legislation and they'll introduce some more formal wording on potential bills later on. But that's what they want to do. They want to do it because they say that the strike action is disproportionate. It goes on too long, it's too big, and it happens too frequently. But the unions, for their part, say, no, we're sorry, we're pretty angry about this. It's anti-democratic. We think it could potentially be illegal. And if it does happen, we'll find a way around it by using the, as you say, work to rule kind of principles, perhaps even organising more strikes locally instead of nationally. So the unions are angry about it. And as you said, Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the RMT, was here earlier today and gave us his feelings.
Well, we feel outraged like everyone else. It's been a set piece this week. This government could have got some talks on this week, but instead they wanted to frame their announcement in the context of some railway strikes. So rather than talking to us from December the 15th, they've decided to wait till next Monday so that they could make this announcement. And of course, what this is an attack on human rights and civil liberties. It's most important in a free society that we have free trade unions. And now that they've lost the argument about the issues, about how public services are funded, how public sector workers are treated, they've also lost the argument on the existing anti-trade union laws, because every union is defeating them by having mass ballots. They want to make the action that comes out of those ballots virtually illegal.
A few other things as well to know. Mick Lynch said he didn't believe the Business Secretary Grant Shapps when Grant Shapps said yesterday clearly, and he said, I want to put this on the record, I'm not putting a ban on striking. I just want to minimise the level of disruption and make sure that if any industrial action happens, then it does so at a safe minimum level. In fact, he said that, long may it continue, that all workers have the right to strike. But Mick Lynch said he's not having any of that. He doesn't believe him. And also Mick Lynch apologised to the hospitality industry when I pointed out that they've lost £2.5 billion since the start of last June. He said actually the blame for that, though, lays at the door of number 10. So the strikes carry on. There will be talks next week between the RMT, the rail delivery group that represents the train companies, and the government and Network Rail. So they'll get around the table next week. But certainly, even though these new laws aren't going to stop the industrial action at the moment, they have definitely affected the mood of those talks, because the companies are going in there and they're pretty knocked off with these plans.
They are indeed. Look, Paul, thank you very much, as ever. Paul Hawkins, GB News' national reporter, giving you the very, very latest from outside Euston Station. I'm going to delve into the inbox because he has kicked right off when it comes to the Prince Harry latest, specifically when it comes to his revelations that he killed 25 members of the Taliban. He described them as chess pieces. Now, I can understand why he's done that, because that is the kind of thing that you would say in a conversation with your therapist in order to maybe minimise the human impact of what you've done. He's taken a life, absolutely. I do also think it's incredibly brave what he did in the first place, actually going out there, not once but twice, and serving, at the time, of course, Queen and country. All of that stuff, incredibly commendable and incredibly great. But he's broken the unspoken code of the military, hasn't it? Which is, you don't really talk about how many people you've killed. To be fair, it's the kind of question that a lot of plebs down the pub after a few pints ask someone who's just got back from a conflict, don't they? And that's always frowned upon as well. But Harry has gone out and said it. Now, my concern with this, as is the concern with a lot of you, people like Pete, who's been on, he says, hasn't he now endangered us all? Well, yes, in a way he has, because he's enraged the Taliban. Not that they needed too much enraging, of course. But do you not think that people who are Islamist extremists, people who are against our occupation or invasion of Afghanistan and maybe some of the other countries around there as well, will now look at this and go, well, hang on a minute, you had, at the time, a serving member of the royal family sitting in a helicopter, shooting at the Taliban, killing them. Does it now, in their warped minds, make it more likely that we're going to end up with terror attacks on the street? Is it not, for someone who wants to go away and protect his family from, presumably, people like me in the media, for goodness sake, to then now open him, his wife and his children and his wider family up to more terror attacks, I think is absolutely bonkers. And I frankly think it's incredibly disrespectful and dangerous for every single person in Britain. Get your views coming in. Also, what he's revealed as well on the Queen's deathbed, what he said to her, I think is the kind of almost like the final disgrace, really. Again, for someone who wants privacy, again, for someone who seems to care so much about privacy, revealing what you've whispered into your nan's ear as she's just recently died, I think is pretty shocking. Disgusted at Harry, says Yvonne. He's betrayed everyone in the UK. He's put his family at risk. What sort of moron does that? He should never come on British soil again. He's disrespected the Queen again. I think he has no brain to do any of this. America is welcome to him. Long live the King. That is the view of Yvonne. Get your views coming in. Make sure you get yourself on the telly today. There's loads to go out today. Harry's Taliban comments, what he said to the Queen on her deathbed as well, basically saying, all right, what he said wasn't a problem at all. Wished her well, etc. Hope she's happy. Charles joking about whether or not he was actually Harry's father. Also, the revelations that both him and supposedly William really desperately urged Charles not to marry Camilla. Can I just point out someone here that I think has got lost in all of this? Kate. I think Kate has been lost in all of this. She didn't sign up for any of this hatred, did she? Patrick Christys on GB News. I want to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But now it is the headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 3:30. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. Prince Harry has revealed he found out his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had died via a news website and not from his family. It's among a number of revelations from his memoir Spare, including allegations his brother, Prince William, attacked him. The Duke of Sussex also claims he killed 25 Taliban fighters in Afghanistan and described them as chess pieces that needed to be taken out. The admission has been condemned by a senior Taliban leader who's taken to Twitter, saying they were humans with families. Former royal correspondent Charles Ray told us the book could be the end of Harry's relationship with the royal family.
These are machine gun revelations and accusations, and it is staggering that he's come out with all this stuff. I mean, to a point of being disgusting with some of the revelations. I don't believe that Harry's ever going to be forgiven for doing what he's done with this book. I mean, the documentaries and the Oprah Winfrey were bad enough, but this book is way out there, really is.
The Prime Minister's invited union leaders representing striking workers to meet with him on Monday. Rishi Sunak says he hopes for a grown-up conversation about what's affordable. It comes as passengers experience the 4th consecutive day of train strikes over jobs, pay and working conditions. Flu cases in England's hospitals are continuing to rise as ambulance handover delays hit a record high. Just over 40% of patients waited more than half an hour to be transferred to A&E last week, and an average of just over 5,000 flu patients were in hospital. That's up 47% on the previous week. It's amid a wave of strikes across the health sector. The Royal College of Nursing says their members will now consider a 10% pay rise instead of the initial 19% demanded. Former Chelsea striker and manager Gianluca Vialli has died from cancer at the age of 58. Vialli earned 59 caps for Italy and won the Champions League with Juventus before joining Chelsea in 1996. He was the first Italian to take charge of a Premier League side, becoming the Blues manager in 1998. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Patrick will be back with you in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Are we all now less safe on the streets? Thanks to Prince Harry. A Taliban spokesperson called on Prince Harry to face trial for war crimes. That's after he claims to have killed 25 Taliban fighters on his second tour of Afghanistan. Describing his time in the military, the Duke of Sussex said he saw enemy combatants as chess pieces on the board that had to be taken out. But the revelation has been greeted with consternation from some military figures who say such statements can imperil security, not, one would imagine, just for his own family. Call me a cynic. I imagine that Harry, a bit of him, wants to do this to try to get back state-sponsored security for his own family. That's just the cynic in me. I think he's endangered, yes, his own wife and children. I think he's endangered our royal family even more than they already are. I think he's endangered, some would say more importantly, in a very real sense and a numbers sense, you, me and everyone that we hold dear. Because, actually, do we need to enrage the Taliban and radical Islamists? We have something like 7,000 people every single year referred to our Prevent programme. Now, we've just given them, for want of a better phrase, a bit more ammunition, haven't we? Thank you very much, Harry. The Taliban have kicked off, although it is rare, isn't it, to unite members of the press and the Taliban in your consternation. With me now is Major General Chip Chapman, former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD. Thank you very much. Great to have you back on the show. Look, are we in any way, shape or form less safe now, potentially, as a result of Prince Harry's comments?
Yeah, I think we possibly are. So if you're going to write a book like Harry did, it should actually go for a legal, ethical and security read to the MOD, because two things are likely to pertain. There's an operational security risk, OPSEC, and personal security risk. So the first one is potentially a risk to him and the wider royal family, either from the Taliban or the wider jihadist movement, which of course has both grievances and ideology. But more widely, the more universal Ummah, the global caliphate, might take the view that Harry has said he killed 25 people. He's killed our brothers. And therefore, it is for us to seek vengeance on the infidels. And you and I, and everyone in the UK, is one of those potential infidels. And we know that the jihadist scene is pretty diverse, both on the right-wing extremism side and on the Islamist side. And they can quickly go from a position of online radicalisation, which the press about this may indeed make them do that, into a position and posture where they may attack people.
Yeah, indeed. Now, this lot don't need any more justification, because I know that they take a very warped interpretation of the Quran and of Islamist ideology, and therefore they already feel as though they're serving a much higher power, and that is their justification. But now, this is increased ammunition. We sent someone over there who was at the time a serving member of the royal family in the name of, at the time, Queen and country, to go and kill members of the Taliban. And surely now the risk of retaliatory attacks on the streets of Britain has increased.
Yeah, that might be true. And you've got to look at a number of metrics for this. And of course, the first one would be, will the threat level go up? So look for that. So at the moment, the threat level is substantial. I suspect it won't go up at the moment. And all the security agencies will be scanning the horizon and the various publications that the jihadist movements put out to see what the sort of mood music is in the encrypted sites that they go to see if this is something that we should worry about. And of course, the Taliban have actually said that Harry should be up in front of a war crime. He's a war criminal. Now, what I would say on that is, it seems to me one of the things that he did do, which is he should have probably done a bit more of in terms of what we've seen of the book so far, is he mentioned that he wanted to get home with his conscience intact, and that the only time he didn't shoot, or the only shots he thought twice about, were the ones he had not taken. That is, he probably applied the laws of armed conflict, and the times he did engage, it was legitimate, proportionate, and necessary. So I think on that, that's a sort of win for him. But more globally, you would say that, you know, he's not only a servant of the crown, he's part of the royal family. And in terms of the values and standards of the armed forces, he broke quite a few of them, you know, respect for others, integrity, loyalty, selfless commitment. All those really show that he was more towards being a soldier than the prince that he often said that he had reversed that in former years.
Look, I have an immense amount of respect for anyone who joins our armed forces, anyone who's willing to make the ultimate sacrifices and indeed as well live with the horrors of the things that they have to see and go through. I can only imagine how terrifying that is. And I am very vocal about the fact that I don't think that we always treat returning members of our armed forces with the dignity and with the respect and with the care that we can. Mental health crisis, housing crisis, etc., issues with addiction, all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to publishing your kill count, that's not really the done thing in the military, is it?
No, and actually, I'd be pretty sceptical about that. So the first reason is Harry was in an Apache helicopter. An Apache helicopter is a crude piece of equipment. There were 2 people in it. So is he really telling us that they killed 50 in the Apache and he had half of that count? Did he claim all 25 and the other guy didn't? He was firing 30mm cannons, 70mm rockets and Hellfire missiles. Some of these, destroy people and blow them to bits. You can't ID these, and very rarely were they all counted. So I'm sceptical about the number. The number should not have been in there anyway, and that's a disaster. I mean, people just don't talk about these things either in open forums or they may have swinging a lamp one-to-one with a mate, but very few people actually know how many people they killed. It's pretty irrelevant. You're trying to achieve your mission, not seeing how many you can kill. Sometimes it's used for propaganda effect in terms of, for example, the female sniper in the Soviet Union who killed 300 people in the Soviet Union, but that's for information operations. Very few people would be able to tell you, I killed X number of people, and very few people want to know that information.
No, you just mentioned there about the validity of this number that you said. I absolutely defer to your knowledge on this. He seems to be saying that with the technology that he's got, he can be absolutely certain that he's killed 25 people on his second tour. I mean, the only thing worse than whipping up a potential international and national and family-based jihadist security risk would be if it's actually based on lies. Are you sceptical about the truth of it? It sounds like you are.
I'm sceptical about the number, not the fact that people weren't killed. I just think that's very difficult to ascertain. For example, you could have an aircraft flying over, not a Taliban because they didn't have one, which could be shot at from various locations, and 10 different people or 10 different weapon systems could claim that they took that down. I think this is the same in terms of these incidents, because don't forget, Harry was there to support ground troops. Ground troops were pretty thin on the ground, which is why ISAF relied on aircraft and artillery, both close air support, cab-ranked combat air patrols and Apache helicopters to try and overcome that deficiency in the number of infantry on the ground.
Just before I let you get going, very quick one to finish with. Should he still be involved with the Invictus Games? A lot of our viewers are getting in touch to say they don't think he should be.
No, I think he should still be on that. He's a veteran. He set it up. Although his star is diminished, let him have that, because that still serves a purpose for the wounded veterans.
Thank you very much. Major General Chip Chapman there, former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD, reacting to Prince Harry publishing his kill count, or alleged kill count, and the consequences that that might have for you, me, his family, of course, the royal family as a wider context. Your views on that are very welcome, especially if you are either serving in the armed forces or have served in the armed forces. Do you think it puts more people at risk? Do you think it's distasteful? Or do you back him as well? Do you think fair play to the guy? He went over there, maybe he suffered a bit mentally as a result of it, and he's got every right to come out and talk about about it. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Talking of views, we do love you here. I have got some interesting revelations coming your way shortly about how much it costs to deport a Channel migrant. And this is all based around a new GB News People's Poll. So we like to survey the nation, don't we? The results of the latest vote are in, and once again, they reveal a valuable insight into you and your minds. Of course, the small boats crisis remains a real area of concern. 57% of those people polled said they weren't confident in the government's ability to get the crisis under control. Bear in mind, just a couple of days ago, our Prime Minister stood up and said, I promise to stop the small boats. Only 4% said they were completely or fairly confident that the government can solve the problem. We also heard from Keir Starmer. He didn't really talk about Channel migrants, did he? Very rarely does. The only things he has said is he wants to tackle the people smuggling gangs and speed up asylum. A lot of people pointing at the processing, I should say. A lot of people pointing out that the rate with which we approve the asylum claims is way above a lot of other European countries, so speeding up might just mean more people quickly. Anyway, I wanted to know what some other political parties were planning on doing about the small boats crisis and whether or not you, the people, had more confidence in them. So I've got Rebecca Jane on, who's Deputy Leader of UKIP. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Great to have you on the show. No surprise that the vast majority of the British public don't have any confidence that the Tory party will do anything to solve the small boats crisis. What would you do?
Exactly. What would we do? So our plan is very different to all of them. So our biggest issue is that they actually get to shore, and we would look to stop that. Well, we want to stop it. So we actually have a plan where converted shipping containers would become a holding facility, and it would actually stop people from getting to the shore, because once they get to shore, they abscond, then they go into the systems, and this is one of the reasons why our country can't cope. So that's the biggest thing for us, is that that's how we would do it. But then first of all, we've got to start looking at making it an actual deterrent. Nobody's going to want to try and cross the channel and end up in a shipping container in the middle of the sea. And then obviously true people that need any help would actually come here. But for me personally, for the next 5 years, potentially even longer, we need to have a complete and utter stop on everybody coming to this country, because we need to help the people that are here now.
Would put a complete block on people, even if they were genuinely fleeing war and persecution in their country?
For 5 years, yes. And I think that we would need to look at other links with other countries to actually help deal with that. I don't think that we should be completely and utterly inhumane. You know, we need to have a plan to how to deal with these people. But there's one thing that's very clear. Our country can't cope with it anymore. We have come to breaking point. You know, think about the United Kingdom as being its own boat. There's only so many people that are going to be able to get in that boat before the boat is sinking. The boat is absolutely sinking, and we're nearly sunk. It has to stop.
Talking of boats, you mentioned there about putting things like shipping containers or whatever offshore as a deterrent, as an offshore processing centre. I can see the logic behind that. What would you say to people who would say that would result in them being kept in inhumane conditions?
Well, we wouldn't put them in inhumane conditions, would we? Because we're a very civilised and wonderful country. We would make sure that they were taken care of, but not at the expense of the British people by, you know, providing goodness knows how much private healthcare for goodness knows how long, and the benefits that they are getting at present and putting them in 4- and 5-star hotels. There is absolutely no need for that to be happening. So we wouldn't put them in inhumane conditions. We would do it appropriately and in a very humane way.
Now, what I think is fascinating is a little bit of a spin, I think, of some of the headlines that I saw earlier today. I teased the British public and our viewers and listeners earlier about how much people think it might cost to put a Channel migrant on a plane and deport them. Apparently, it's £8,000 per person. This information has come as a result of a Freedom of Information request, which indicated that between January and October 2022, there was a cost of £11 million for removing those with no right to remain in the United Kingdom. Of course, I suppose it very much depends on how many people you put on each flight, doesn't it? But these are the figures that we've got at the moment. But do you not think, Rebecca, when people look at the cost that it is to put them in various different hotels with food, etc., of course, and then maybe as well release them into social housing stock and have any children, etc., using public services, schools, actually that cost is a lot greater, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's absolutely extortionate. And it's not just a case of we're dealing with this situation quickly. They are, we're taking years to process these applications, and most of them are completely and utterly fabricated. Albania is not a country that needs people to claim asylum. It's not a thing. So yes, the cost of it right now is out of control. And when we talk about, putting them in social housing and everything else, I understand people who want to try and make an argument for the fact of obviously they need help, and well, some people need help. But the British people, our veterans and our homeless are going out onto the streets. They're not being given social housing. Where do we start?
I get that. Look, Rebecca, thank you very much, as ever. Rebecca Jane, there, Deputy Leader of UKIP. Look, we heard what Rishi Sunak had to say earlier on about his plans to stop the small boat crossings. He's hanging his hat on it, isn't he? There's a little bit of jeopardy in what he said there about whether or not we should judge him by that. It's going to be tough to get it. 57% of people said that they don't believe he'll actually do much about it. Keir Starmer, I'm not really sure that many people believe he'll do much about it. You've heard what UKIP are going to do, a complete block on anyone coming for 5 years to look after the people that we've already got here, supposedly, plus offshore shipping containers to introduce what they would regard as a deterrent. How do you feel about that compared to what the leaders of our main two parties have been saying? But we are staying with this GB News People's poll now. Support among respondents for Britain, get this, rejoining the EU fell, apparently. That's after they were provided details of what it would actually entail. When people were informed that rejoining the European Union would mean rejoining the single market, Schengen area and other institutions, support for rejoining the bloc declined by 4 points. Who best to talk with this about than our very own political reporter? It's Olivia Utley. Olivia, these results, what do you make of them?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Essentially, for the last few months, well, years really, we've seen that support for Brexit has been declining generally in the polls. Not every single poll, but that's the trend that we've been seeing generally. What Matthew Goodwin, who commissioned this poll, did was shake up the question a bit. So instead of rejoin the EU or stay with Brexit, the question was rejoin the EU, which would mean signing up to the Schengen area, signing up to many more EU institutions than we were in when we were actually in the EU last time, or leave. Then you see a majority of people voting for leave, which is very interesting because essentially if Britain were to join the EU, it is extremely unlikely that we would get the same sort of deal as we had last time. Britain was always sort of half in, half out of the EU. We were never in Schengen, of course. There were plenty of other exceptions that we got to general EU membership. But obviously the EU wouldn't grant us those sort of exceptions again. They found they made it very difficult for us to get out, and they would also make it very difficult for us to get in. Otherwise, there's a kind of idea that you can come and go from the EU.
Exactly,
yeah. Exactly
we'd have to prostrate ourselves at the altar of the EU. We would have to prostrate ourselves,
exactly, and we would have to sign up to all sorts of new conditions. So what this poll basically brings to light is the idea that rejoining the EU might not be what people imagine it to be, and rejoining the EU in reality would involve something which we are not familiar with at all in this country, and that is actually quite unpopular.
Olivia, thank you very much. Short and sweet, but I'm sure you'll be back a little bit later on for us. Olivia Utley there, GB News' political reporter. You're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. What an hour that is, people. I've got 2 more coming your way. Loads more on Prince Harry and his big revelations, your views. What's the thing that's annoyed you most? Is it the fact he's put us all at risk? GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Good evening. Many of us have a dry Friday, but the first weekend of the year will be dominated by showers. Lots of showers, often heavy, coming through on a fairly gusty wind, and it'll start to turn a little cooler as well. Pretty mild tonight, but we're kind of between weather systems, or have been through the day, which is why most of us have been dry. But these weather fronts now edging in from the west are bringing wet conditions. Some quite heavy rain moving across Northern Ireland into Scotland, and particularly for South Wales and South West England. That heavy rain through the early hours could cause a few problems, so we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. Much of eastern England will stay dry overnight, and Northern Ireland will turn dry after midnight. Temperatures actually rising in many places through the night. We start the weekend in double digits. We also start with a fair bit of rain around. Still some heavy rain for Wales and southwest England, especially first thing. That rain will move eastward, so eventually turning up across East Anglia and the southeast during the morning, and then head out into the North Sea. It may linger across the easternmost parts of England and Scotland until around dusk.
It'll be followed by drier, brighter weather for a time, and then the showers get going. Lots of heavy showers zipping through on that gusty wind come the afternoon. Temperatures actually dropping a little through the afternoon as well, so feeling cooler than it has done, especially with the wind, and especially if you get caught in a downpour, of which there will be plenty more to come through Saturday evening. A showery night. It gets very windy once more in the north of Scotland. And that leads into a blustery, gusty day on Sunday with further heavy showers to come, particularly for Wales and southern England. Could be quite a wet day for parts of the southeast. Northeast England, southern Scotland, northeastern Scotland may not see too many showers actually. So here, by and large, it could be a mostly dry day. And there will be sunny spells elsewhere between the showers, but those showers will keep coming on that gusty wind. Temperatures down close to average, but feeling cooler with the wind.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
It's just gone 4 o'clock. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Now, the Duke of Sussex once believed his mother faked her own death in a bid to escape the press. This has just dropped. This is the latest from Prince Harry's revelation. He's told how he wanted the inquiry into her fatal car crash to be reopened. It's all part of this controversial new memoir. Don't miss this, people. We're going to be talking about this in just a second, actually. He's also picked a fight with the Taliban. Yep, that's right, not for the first time, to be fair. He's revealed he killed 25 fighters from the organisation which now governs Afghanistan. A spokesman from the Taliban has now called on the Duke to face an international war crimes trial. Has he put a target on his back? Has he put a target on all of our backs now? We've enraged the Taliban, apparently, thanks to Prince Harry. Not good stuff. We'll be discussing all of that next. In other news, our GB News People's poll revealed 57% of you have no confidence at all in the government's ability to get a grip on the migrants' crisis. Can Rishi Sunak stop the crossings? That's all coming up later on at this hour. More on the strike misery. The RMT is staging further strike action across the next 48 hours. It means just 20% of services are running across the country. Are the unions right to walk out? But what does work to rule really mean? Mick Lynch has threatened it, and I actually think that could cripple us. I've got all of this and much, much more coming your way. I want to hear from you. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We're going to be discussing those latest revelations that Prince Harry thought Diana had faked her own death and was blocked, apparently, from re-investigating her death. Interesting stuff. But what angers you most about Harry's book? Is it the national security threat? Has he disrespected our dead Queen? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Now, though, it's your headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. A senior Taliban leader has hit back at Prince Harry, saying the militants he claims to have killed in Afghanistan were not chess pieces, they were humans. He was responding to revelations from the Duke of Sussex's memoir, Spare, in which he admits to killing 25 Taliban fighters as a helicopter pilot. The book is due to be published next week, but mistakenly went on sale in Spain yesterday. In it, Prince Harry also reveals he found out his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had died via a news website and not from his family. Royal expert Charles Ray says the book could be the end of Harry's relationship with the royal family.
These are machine gun revelations and accusations, and it is staggering that he's come out with all this stuff. I mean, to a point of being disgusting with some of the revelations. I don't believe that Harry's ever going to be forgiven for doing what he's done with this book. I mean, the documentaries and the Oprah Winfrey were bad enough, but this book is way out there, really is.
The Prime Minister has invited union leaders representing striking workers to meet with him on Monday. Rishi Sunak says he hopes for a grown-up conversation about what's affordable. It comes as passengers experience the 4th consecutive day of train strikes over jobs, pay and working conditions. Only 20% of services are operating as normal. Mr Sunak says the government will try and ensure some services continue during industrial action.
We're going to bring forward new laws in common with countries like France, Italy, Spain and others that ensure that we have minimum levels of safety in critical areas like fire, like ambulance, so that even when strikes are going on, you know that your health will be protected. I think that's entirely reasonable, and that's what our new laws will do.
But the RMT's General Secretary, Mick Lynch, says he doesn't think the potential new laws will work.
They've also lost the argument on the existing anti-trade union laws because every union is defeating them by having mass ballots. They want to make the action that comes out of those ballots virtually illegal. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think they understand what they're doing. They keep quoting what goes on in France and Spain and all the rest of the world. These laws have never been enforced in those countries, and they're not enacted in the same way that Grant Shapps is trying to bring in.
Flu cases in England's hospitals are continuing to rise as ambulance handover delays hit a record high. Just over 40% of patients waited more than half an hour to be transferred to A&E last week. An average of just over 5,000 flu patients were in hospital. That's up 47% on the previous week. It comes amid a wave of strikes across the health sector. The Royal College of Nursing now says their members will consider a 10% pay rise instead of the 19% originally demanded. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he's keen for an agreement.
Well, I'm keen to have dialogue with Pat Cullen and the RCN. I wrote to them last week looking at the coming year, at the pressures from inflation and cost of living, how we could work together to make any settlement more affordable in terms of looking at what productivity opportunities there are, what efficiency opportunities there are, because there's common ground in recognising that the NHS is under pressure and we need to respond to that.
Police in Scotland have confirmed the names of 2 women and a man who died at a fire in a hotel in Perth. Donna Jans van Rensburg, Sharon McLean and Keith Russell were killed in the blaze at New County Hotel in the early hours of Monday morning. The 2 women are sisters from Aberdeen and the man was originally from Edinburgh. Donna's 3-year-old King Charles Spaniel also died in the fire. The investigation into the cause is ongoing. The US president will mark the 2nd anniversary of the attack on the US Capitol with an award ceremony at the White House. President Joe Biden will award 12 people with the Presidential Citizens Medal, one of the country's highest honour for civilians. It will be given to law enforcement officers, election workers and state and local officials. It's after a mob of Donald Trump supporters stormed the building in a failed bid to block Congress from certifying the 2020 election. Former Chelsea striker and manager Gianluca Vialli has died from cancer at the age of 58. Vialli earned 59 caps for Italy and won the Champions League with Juventus before joining Chelsea in 1996. He was the first Italian to take charge of a Premier League side, becoming Blues manager in 1998. And the number of independent bookshops in UK and Ireland has reached a 10-year high. The Booksellers Association says the increase is down to an astonishing number of new books coming out during the pandemic. It's the 6th consecutive year that the number of bookshops has increased. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
OK, welcome back. Well, look, when I came on air, there was a lot to talk about when it came to Prince Harry, wasn't there? There was his revelations about how many people he'd killed, members of the Taliban he'd killed, and whether or not that meant that we were now all under more threat of a terror attack here. What he said to the Queen on her deathbed, is that, frankly, a desecration of her legacy? Charles making dad jokes, for want of a better phrase, him not wanting Charles to marry Camilla, but now there's something even more startling that's emerged, actually. Prince Harry wanted the inquiry into Princess Diana's death to be reopened. And get this, he once believed that she faked her own death. That's according to revelations in his new memoir, Spare. He described how, after his mother's death, he was left in Balmoral Castle with nothing to do but roam the hall, with a suspicion taking hold that it was all a trick played by Diana. Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace have both said they will not comment on the revelations in the book. Joining me now is GB News' royal reporter Cameron Walker. Blinking, you'll miss it when it comes to revelations of this book. Firstly, initially, as a child, he thought she'd faked her own death, maybe.
Yes, so this is in the immediate aftermath of Princess Diana's death. Prince Harry was with his brother and the Queen and Prince Charles at Balmoral Castle in Aberdeen. And he said he was left with nothing to do. This is according to an extract of Prince William's book, which has been published by Page Six, the US website. He had nothing to do but roam the castle. So thoughts went into his head that Princess Diana had faked her own death in order to get away from press intrusion, perhaps a little bit of wishful thinking with the kind heart of a 12-year-old boy who's just lost his mother. I think the more serious points which Prince Harry has made in this memoir is the fact that he claims him and his brother, the now Prince of Wales, were talked out of calling for a reinvestigation into Princess Diana's death by, and I quote, the powers at be.
That's quite startling, really. So clearly there, according to Harry, both him and our future king, Prince William, wanted her death to be reinvestigated. We know that conspiracy theorists have said rather a lot about the death of Diana. We don't particularly want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole, but the fact is they were talked out of it.
That is what Prince Harry is claiming in his new memoir, but this is what the official investigation we know that happens. There was a police investigation in 2006. They concluded that it was a tragic accident, that the car crashed in that tunnel in Paris and that Diana was killed. The 2008 inquest found that Diana had been unlawfully killed alongside her then-partner Dodi Fayed as a result of gross negligence by both the driver, Henry Poole, who was under the influence of alcohol, and the paparazzi who were pursuing them on motorbikes, and the fact that they weren't wearing seatbelts. All of that contributed to Princess Diana's death. Interestingly, immediately following that, the inquest conclusion in 2008, the Prince William and Harry released a joint statement saying they agreed with that verdict. So clearly now the fact that Prince Harry is saying that he was talked out of calling for a reinvestigation, I think perhaps speaks volumes. It's stirring up clearly a very traumatic moment for both Prince William and Prince Harry, and clearly it's something that perhaps Prince William, I would imagine, does not want in the public domain, that all of this is coming out again 25 years after the princess's death.
Absolutely. Cameron, thank you very much for bringing us bang up to date when it comes to these ever more startling revelations from Prince Harry's memoir. Cameron Walker there, GB News' royal reporter. Joining us now is royal commentator Michael Cole. Michael, thank you. I just want to ask you about your take when it comes to Prince Harry revealing that he was talked out of pushing for a reinvestigation into his mother's death. Presumably now, this is a field day for conspiracy theorists.
This is quite something, isn't it, Patrick? For once, a royal book that lives up to the pre-publication hype. Prince Harry hasn't just blown the doors off Buckingham Palace, he's detonated a huge landmine under it, which is rocking the royal edifice and indeed the British establishment. Well, I've known for some years that Prince Harry has never accepted the authorised version that his mother died in a tragic crash.
Let me just come in there, Michael. Let me just come in there, because that's a really key point. So, as far as you're aware, Prince Harry has never accepted the version of events that his mother was killed by a drink driver in a tragic accident under a bridge in Paris whilst being chased by the Paps. What does he think happened?
Correct. He accepted... He believes his mother was killed, and indeed that was the verdict of the 11 good and true London men and women who made up the jury at the inquest into Princess Diana's death and Dodi Fayed's death in 2007-8. They were told by the coroner, Lord Thomas Scott Baker, that they couldn't return a verdict of murder, and they brought in the most serious, the most grave verdict they could, which was unlawful killing. Now, they accepted it, as Cameron said, and they put out a statement, and Mr. Mohammed Al Fayed accepted it, but he said at the same time he hoped that in due time new evidence would be adduced, which would lead to the reopening of a proper inquiry into this matter. And I can only say that it would have helped 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 25 years ago, if the royal princes had voiced their misgivings then, because for 10 years, Mohammed Al Fayed, from the death of his son and the beloved friend, Diana, Princess of Wales, for 10 years, he was a lonely voice in the wilderness, and he was being attacked on all sides by the media. And only his persistence managed to even get a joint inquest in London, and the jury did their best. But there is no doubt that Harry is right on that. It does need... Whether this is the right way to go about it is another thing, Patrick.
Well, I've got to ask, Michael. I've got to ask. So they weren't allowed to return a verdict of murder. They did return a verdict of unlawful killing. What's the implication here, Michael?
Well, they weren't. If you read the judge's summing up, and the judge who was a coroner, and his opening statements, he said, and I was sitting there quite clearly, the verdict of murder is not open to you. You see, there was never an investigation. The French inquiry was into a traffic accident. They were not aware that the princess had predicted her own death in very similar circumstances to the way that it actually happened. Had they known about the Lord Mishcon note, the note her solicitor made, and the Burrell note, the note in her own handwriting where she predicted her death in a car crash, had those notes been sent to the French inquiry, they wouldn't have investigated it as a traffic accident. They'd have started looking at it as a crime scene. And Prince Harry is wrong about a lot of things, and we could list them. And I think he's going about this the wrong way. But he's not wrong that there was never a thoroughgoing inquiry. What the establishment wanted was to hush it up as much as possible. I sat there for 6 months listening to the inquests, and there was every impetus on the jury to bring in the accidental death verdict, but they refused to do so because they heard everything.
Michael, this is interesting stuff, and obviously we're raising this now if people are just joining us, because Prince Harry's latest revelations are that he had hoped that his mum was faking her own death, look, as any child obviously would. And then, of course, on top of that, he said that he wanted to reinvestigate her death. He was blocked by the powers that be. Michael, I was not aware that the jury in this investigation initially, or the inquest initially, were not allowed to return a verdict to murder. I must say, unlawful killing, yeah, they could have gone accidental death. Look, Michael, I have got to ask again, the implication here is what? Is that someone wanted her dead?
No, I think the implication is, and it's amazing what you find out when you ask as perceptive questions as you customarily do, Patrick. No, if you read through the transcript, it is all there. Certainly, the establishment here wanted to get past this as soon as they possibly could, and they wanted an accidental death verdict. Well, they didn't get that. And as you've just also said, Harry, without naming them, has said that powerful forces, men, we presume, within the palace, talked him and Prince William, because Prince William had his grave misgivings about what had happened. They were talked out of having a press conference and announcing that they wished to have another thoroughgoing inquiry into the death of their mother, and of course Dodi fired. And it's interesting what Harry says. I mean, he said on several occasions that he's living out the destiny of his mother, moving to California, even where Diana was considering going to live with Dodi in Malibu. It's all very fascinating. I mean, there's a lot in this book. As I say, it's explosive. It's obviously heartfelt. There's going to be plenty of criticism of it. But that central point, he's not wrong on.
And when you look at how clearly damaged Prince Harry is, now, there's a lot of different things in his life that could have damaged him. 2 active tours of duty, the killing of 25 members of the Taliban, for example, clearly his mother's death, and just generally being a member of the royal family. I don't think anyone really disputes that, by the way, and I want to make this point, which is I don't really think anyone disputes that Harry had a difficult upbringing, and that being a member of the royal family, whilst you have amazing luxuries and huge opportunities, and whilst people don't forgive him for his kind of non-stop whinging right now, I think everyone can understand that it must have been difficult for the lad growing up, right? And you add to that the death of his mother. If he has never fully accepted the version of events, i.e. that his own mother was killed by a drink driver under a bridge in Paris, tragic accident, chased by the Paps, and he was blocked, in his view, blocked from reinvestigating that, and he's clearly very suspicious of the forces that be behind the scenes in this country. Can you understand why that might have screwed him up a bit?
Yeah, also, I don't think the cocaine and the cannabis, which he's admitted to very foolishly, can have helped either. But, you know, you just have to, we have to read the book in its English version. But don't forget that Her Majesty the Queen, in a version that was never challenged, allegedly said to Paul Burrell when he was leaving royal service, take care, Paul. There are dark forces in this country about which we know little. I mean, that was the gypsy's warning, if ever I heard one. So, listen, I'm not making a case for anything. I'm not an advocate for anybody. I no longer have the privilege of speaking to Mr. Al-Fayed. I know that he will be encouraged by what Prince Harry has said, and he will also be grateful for the kind words that Prince Harry has said about Dodi and his character, and how he made his mother, Princess Diana, happy, put big red hearts in her eyes, as he put it. So there are some things in there which I think people can take as being utterly truthful. He may be misguided, he may be mixed up. I'm not a clinician. I can't tell you whether that is true or not. I'm not a psychologist, and nor are you, as far as I know, Patrick, although you have many gifts. So we don't know. But quite clearly here, he's felt the compulsion to bring all this out into the open. It's not the royal way. Perhaps it's not the advisable way. And if I were giving him PR advice, I would have said, don't do it.
Yeah, look, thank you very much, Michael. Michael Cole, there, royal commentator, reacting for the vast majority of that interview anyway to the latest revelations to come out of Prince Harry's book, which are that he initially hoped that Diana had faked her own death to get away from the Paps. That's, of course, as a young boy in the immediate aftermath of finding out that his mother had passed away. I think everyone can, of course, relate to that, can understand that. Now, though, this revelation that he says that both him and William wanted there to be a reinvestigation, an investigation reopened into his mother's death, not accepting clearly the verdict at the time. And I think this is interesting because with everything that Harry has done here now, with revealing the number of people he's killed fighting the Taliban, that potentially has dragged other people into it. His family, us, in terms of a national security and a terror risk. When you look at now the revelations about his mother and his concerns that maybe there was a bit something untoward that was going on there, has that not raked a load of stuff up for William? Has it not raked a load of stuff up for the royal family? Camilla, of course, as well, now saying that he begged Charles, he begged his dad for Camilla not to be his wicked stepmother, as it were. I can't help but wonder now, with Harry getting a lot off his chest and maybe trying to make himself feel better, is he making it a lot worse for a lot of other people? And is that fair? Is that the kind, benevolent thing to do? I'm not sure it is. GB views at gbnews.uk. Get those views coming in. The latest revelations there that Prince Harry wanted the investigation into Diana's death to be reopened, but was talked out of it by the powers that be. Coming up, we've got the latest on that dispute between rail unions and the government. Rishi Sunak's attempting to implement laws which would enable the government to sue some unions if they don't provide minimum service levels. The unions are not taking this line down, by the way. They're saying they might work to rule, which, frankly, actually could be quite bad. Got all the latest on that and, of course, the People's Poll when it comes to how many of you don't believe that our government will do anything in the Channel. Oh, and do you know how much it costs to actually deport a Channel migrant?
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, we're moving away from Harry and we're talking about strikes, people, OK? Another one of your top favourites, but we'll try and make it interesting. Members of the RMT union have walked out today, leaving just 20% of trains running. The government's now planning on introducing legislation to ensure a minimum service level, safe service level, is kept at all times in essential industries. So that means that if they don't provide a service, they could be sued by the government. I'm not sure exactly how much they will care about that, but in the last few hours, the Prime Minister has spoken to broadcasters where he was quizzed on what he would do to stop the constant strike action.
With regard to strikes, yesterday the government wrote to all union leaders, inviting them in for talks on Monday. We incredibly value the important work that our public sector workers do, especially our nurses, and we want to have an honest, grown-up conversation about what's affordable, what's responsible for the country. Those invitations have gone out, and I'm hopeful that those meetings can happen on Monday so we can have a productive conversation and find a way through this. So I fully believe in the union's role in our society and the freedom for them to strike. But I also believe that that should be balanced with the right of ordinary working people to go about their lives free from significant disruption. And that's why we're going to bring forward new laws in common with countries like France, Italy, Spain and others that ensure that we have minimum levels of safety in critical areas like fire, like ambulance, so that even when strikes are going on, you know that your health will be protected. I think that's entirely reasonable, and that's what our new laws will do. We've always been clear that we want to have a grown-up, honest conversation, a two-way conversation with union leaders, and that's why the government has written, all departments have written to all their unions, inviting them in for talks on Monday, so that we can have those conversations, talking about what's affordable, what's reasonable, what's responsible for our country. I think everyone agrees that the most pressing economic priority we have is reducing the cost of living, and getting a grip of inflation is the best way we can do that to ease the cost of living, not only for nurses, but for everyone.
He's better when he's not looking at an auto cue, isn't he? Although I should know, I suppose. Joining me now is our political reporter, Olivia Rutley. Olivia, I get the impression that this might all be coming to a bit of an end, hopefully. Now, Rishi Sunak has said there that he will consider introducing essentially anti-strike laws. Mick Lynch has hit back, hasn't he?
Yes, Rishi Sunak's anti-strike laws have been talked about for a long time. Finally, he's beginning to outline some sort of timescale for this. It's expected that the legislation will be draft legislation published next week and then debated the week after that. The problem is, of course, that we know already that it's going to be held up by the courts, by the House of Lords, who definitely won't like it. And there could even be problems on Rishi Sunak's own backbenches, because in the Conservative manifesto, they mentioned minimum level service for the railways, but not for any of the other striking unions. So yes, this might be the long-term solution, but there are a lot of hurdles we have to overcome before we get to any sort of serious...
Yeah, and my understanding is, based on various interviews I've seen with Mick Lynch, is that our rail service very often runs on overtime. It needs people in order for the services that we know and quite often don't enjoy to actually work. People have to be working overtime. That's how they fill their roster. And so if they work to rule and don't work overtime, then actually that's almost like a pseudo-strike, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And there are also... We've got to remember that the strikers themselves, the workers themselves, are the support for their unions is actually slowly, it seems, ebbing away a little bit. We've seen that poll after poll over the last few months has gone down in support for the RMT and what when a pay offer is put to the strikers, support is going up for the offers and down for the union's hard line on this. And part of that, of course, is that some of these strikers have been on strike for 20 days in the last 200. That's 1 in 10. They're losing a lot of money because of this. And some of them like the overtime.
Well, some of them like the overtime. I mean, the point here is that many of them will need the overtime as well, so they will factor that into their annual income. Their basic salary might be whatever it is, but then you add to it the amount of overtime that you do. So Mick Lynch saying, OK, well, you can only work to rule. Quite a lot of those people, I would imagine, will just go, no, bye, Mick.
Well, yes, it's sort of similar to the 0 hours contract issue that we saw a couple of years ago. 0 hours contracts, of course, are terrible for some people, but for students or plenty of people who just want casual work, they're quite useful. Same goes for this argument with overtime. Ultimately, it seems more likely that we will get through this strike deadlock through something like workers losing patience a little bit with Mick Lynch, or needing to be back at work full-time to be able to feed their families and heat their homes, rather than this anti-strike legislation, which it feels is going to get caught up in a lot of...
I just feel as though we're on the cusp of something here. I think hopefully this time next week, maybe that's a bit ambitious, we'll have had talks, there'll be an initial round of talks. Mick Lynch will come out and go, well, he offered us nothing. Rishi Sunak will come and go, you know, well, I thought that was very productive, and then Mick Lynch will go back and forth, and then maybe by about Thursday we'll have some kind of deal and our rail services will go back to being bang average yet again. Olivia, thank you very much. Olivia Utley there, our political reporter. I've got loads coming your way. Patrick Christys here on GB News. Coming up, we will be digesting the latest GB News People's Poll, which has found a huge 57% of you, our people, have zero confidence that the government can sort out the small boats crisis. I tell you what, I found out earlier the numbers about how much it actually costs, apparently, to deport a migrant. Now, bear in mind the cost that you think it takes to process an asylum claim, put them up in hotels, give them, of course, all the food that they need to live, and then release them out into the British society, whether they're in social housing, their kids are going to school, the cost to our health system. Anyway, the number it apparently costs to deport these people, to fly them abroad, is £8,000 per person. So, due to a Freedom of Information request, between January and October 2022, there was a cost of £11 million for removing those with no right to remain in the UK. Since 2020, as much as £30 million has been spent on sending people back after arriving in Britain. Bear in mind that we spend something like £7 million a day on hotels. To me, it does actually seem like it makes increasingly more financial sense to actually speed up our deportations, doesn't it? And when you look at the fact that we do seem to allow a lot more people than a lot of other countries, I think maybe it's about time too. GB Views at gbnews.uk, but now it's your latest headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4:30. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. A senior Taliban leader has hit back at Prince Harry, saying the militants he claims to have killed in Afghanistan were not chess pieces, they were humans. He was responding to revelations from the Duke of Sussex's memoir, Spare, in which he admits to killing 25 Taliban fighters as a helicopter pilot. Prince Harry also reveals he found out his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had died via a news website and not from his family. Royal expert Charles Ray says the book could be the end of Harry's relationship with the royal family.
These are machine gun revelations and accusations, and it is staggering that he's come out with all this stuff. I mean, to a point of being disgusting with some of the revelations. I don't believe that Harry's ever going to be forgiven for doing what he's done with this book. I mean, the documentaries in the Oprah Winfrey were bad enough, but this book is way out there, really is.
Prime Minister's invited union leaders representing striking workers to meet with him on Monday. Rishi Sunak says he hopes for a grown-up conversation about what's affordable. It comes as passengers experience the fourth consecutive day of train strikes over jobs, pay and conditions. Flu cases in England's hospitals are continuing to rise as ambulance handover delays hit a record high. Just over 40% of patients waited more than half an hour to be transferred to A&E last week, and an average of just over 5,000 flu patients were in hospital. That's up 47% on the previous week. It's amid a wave of strikes across the health sector. The Royal College of Nursing says their members will now consider a 10% pay rise instead of the 19% originally demanded. And police in Scotland have confirmed the names of 2 women and a man who died in a fire at a hotel in Perth. Donna Jantz van Rensburg, Sharon McLean and Keith Russell were killed in the blaze at New County Hotel in the early hours of Monday morning. The 2 women are sisters from Aberdeen and the man was originally from Edinburgh. Donna's 3-year-old King Charles Spaniel also died in the fire. The investigation into the cause is ongoing. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Patrick will be back with you in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, that's the rather moody People's Poll sting, isn't it? There we go. Right, the results of GB News' People Poll are in. I'm going to read them to you, then I'm going to get a bit of your reaction. We're going to go to a guest on this because 57% of people, you, polled, said that they weren't confident in the government's ability to keep a handle on the small boats crisis in the Channel. So 57% of you. Bear in mind that Rishi Sunak said he's going to stop it. Right, 57% of you don't even think he can keep a handle on it. Just 4% are either completely or fairly confident in the government's ability to solve the problem. Presumably those people don't live on this planet. But in light of the fact that we had Rishi Sunak earlier on in the week saying, yes, I'm going to stop it, and we know some of the things he's going to do to try to stop it, don't we? There is talk, it is just very, very quiet talk, though, of some kind of offshore processing scheme, disused ferries and cruises and all of this stuff, P&O migrants or whatever they want to call them. There's talk of that. It's probably not really going to happen. Speeding up the asylum claim. Now, that might reduce the asylum backlog. A lot of people, I think, legitimately expressing the concerns it will just lead to more people here because we do tend to accept a lot more asylum seekers than a lot of our European friends and neighbours, don't we? So that may well end up meaning that. What else is he really going to do to try to do it, to try to solve the problem? Well, optics-wise, he says that he's got British boots on the ground in France. Look, we all know this. Basically, the point is that a lot of you don't believe that anything's going to happen. Keir Starmer, for his part, he says, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look upstream. And by that he means I'm going to tackle these human trafficking gangs. Well, that's fine, Keir, but as it currently stands, the full might of Europol and Interpol appears unable or unwilling in order to do that. And as long as we are the final stop on the destination, why on earth would our European friends, again, get involved and try to help us be the ones to crack down on these human trafficking gangs? So I can understand why a lot of you don't have any credibility when it comes to those two people, but I did get on earlier anyway the deputy leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, to give us her solution and her party's solution to this, and I wanted to go to some of your reactions on that, actually. What she said was absolutely, completely offshore shipping containers so that people never set foot in the UK. Now, interestingly, she also proposed a complete 5-year ban on anyone, even legitimate asylum seekers, even legitimate refugees, on anyone being allowed to set foot in Britain and stay in Britain via the Channel. She says that's the ultimate deterrence, right? So I wanted to know what a lot of you made of that and also get a reaction from you on, apparently now, it's costing us £8,000 per person to put people on deportation flights. A lot of people are saying, well, how can it cost that much? I get that, but it's not just the flight in context there, is it? It's the manpower that it goes to actually take it. It's not like when you buy a ticket to go to Malaga, right? You know, you've got people there who have to obviously fly the plane as well, various different staff, various different security, and the legal process as well. £8,000 per migrant. I would just like to make the point as well how much it costs, roughly speaking, £7 million a day just to house people in hotels. That's before we've fed them. That's before then they've maybe been given leave to stay. They can go and access our public services. Gary's been on. Gary says, Patrick, £8,000 per person is, yeah, there you go, a lot cheaper than what we're paying them right now. But also quite a few people, including Gwyneth, thank you very much, Gwyneth, great name, Gwyneth, saying she actually had not heard UKIP's proposal to solving the migrant crisis at the moment, and she believes that offshore processing and offshore shipping containers would actually win her vote. So 57% of you in our People's Poll, as it currently stands, believe that neither political party is going to actually do a jot when it comes to sorting our migrant crisis out. Joining us now to react to your views, the People's Poll, is Stephen Wolfe from the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. First and foremost, Stephen, are you surprised at the idea that 57% of the fair people of this country don't believe that Rishi Sunak is going to actually make a dent when it comes to stopping our Channel migrant crisis?
Well, I don't think anyone should be surprised that the government is not seen to be actually achieving its stated goals of stopping the migrant crisis. And the reason why people are supporting your poll in the numbers that they have is that they saw Boris Johnson say the same, Priti Patel say the same. And let's be fair, David Cameron in the past and Tony Blair and most prime ministers have said we'd try and control immigration. And this also actually maps out a similar kind of attitude that is occurring in what's called the red wall seats. A recent YouGov poll said that at least 40% of people in those seats do not believe that immigration will be controlled, and it is a major issue. And they don't believe that immigration has actually been positive for the country. So on a whole, your poll, your viewers are matching what's going out across the rest of the country, and particularly the important seats of the Conservatives.
Yeah, Stephen, I want your take on this. You had Rebecca Jane on earlier. She said that there would be a 5-year ban on anyone coming over the Channel, even if they were proven to be legitimate asylum seekers. She said that she needed to do that in order to care for the people that we already have here. What do you make of that? It's gone down quite well. Jackie in Norwich thinks it's an excellent idea.
And I think it would be regarded as a truly tremendous idea, again, for those people who have voted in your People's Poll and those being polled by other organisations who believe that migration should be controlled. And it would be, if it was possible to achieve, certainly a major deterrent to the people smugglers and those willing to come across, e.g. the Albanians who are coming over simply for connecting with the criminal gangs in some cases, as our major crime agencies are suggesting. But the difficulty with not being able to allow even those who've been qualified as asylum once they're on their boats or in these containers is our membership of the UN Refugees Convention, which would allow them to stay unless they're in a policy like that of Rwanda.
I'm just going to read out some facts and figures here, because the latest numbers when it comes to the cost of deporting people are staggering, no matter which angle you take on it. Now, the narrative at the moment, actually, I must say, including on GBNews' own website, so I don't want to go against the grain here, I might get sacked, but they're saying, is this staggering amount, eye-watering amount of taxpayers' money, £8,000 per person to deport them. Now, I do get that that's a lot, right, for reasons I'm going to go into. However, when I look at the cost that it costs to actually keep a lot of people here as well, £8,000 starts to look like a bargain, actually. But let's just read some of these things out. In the first 10 months of 2022, a total of 54 flights were chartered to send 1,356 people back to their home country. Now, obviously, everyone can realise that the reason why it's costing around £8,000 per illegal immigrant is because we're sending so few of them back. If we put more people on the planes, the cost would go down. I mean, how do you think the public should react to this news, that £8,000 per person? Do you think we're getting value for money there? Should there be more people on these planes?
Well, we're absolutely not getting value for money. And if I analyse those figures, I would suspect that the vast majority of those people on those planes aren't those claiming asylum, but actually being returned for what's called foreign nationals or foreign criminals. And there has been success in moving them back. You're not getting value for money because you're not filling the planes. And we're not getting value for money because the asylum system isn't doing what it's saying. When we're rejecting asylum applicants, of which last year there was around 20,000, are not being returned. But bear this cost in mind, Patrick. In the first year, it costs £40,000 to 45,000 on a different analysis for the one asylum seeker to stay in this country each year. And therefore, the total budget of the asylum and immigration system, from collecting them to monitoring them to police to the legal services, is around 8 to 10 billion pounds a year.
Yeah.
So removing them at 8,000 is actually small feed in the grand scheme of the costs of asylum and immigration.
Yeah, and the ongoing cost as well. The Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead came on earlier this week, a councillor from there, and told me that that council has already had to find £1 million, which equated, supposedly, to a 1.5% increase in every single member's council tax in order to accommodate and look after just the child migrants who'd come over, who are now in that particular ward of its jurisdiction, as it were, which is a staggering amount of money. The other thing that Rebecca Jane off of UKIP mentioned, which I'm keen to get your views on, in terms of her solution, given that Our People's poll revealed that 57% of people think that Rishi Sunak's going to do naff all about what's going on in the Channel. Do you think that disused shipping containers could actually be a solution in the Channel? Is that, frankly, now the only deterrent?
Well, whether it's disused shipping containers or whether you're using old ships themselves or old cruise liners, the principle is really being whether you can just get somebody onto that boat and keep them there and maybe move them out of the jurisdiction of the UK without breaching the UN Refugee Convention. And you've seen how hard it has been for the government to succeed with the Rwanda policy. Now, they have succeeded, but there are real difficulties they're now facing in some of the rules that the court has suggested that they now have to follow. So Rebecca's policy is very welcome to those who want to see an end to the Channel migrants, but it will again face huge pressure. And you need strong politicians and strong leadership to have that type of policy be successful.
Okay, all right, just in terms of your desires, how would you properly sort it? I'm keen to get solutions here. I'm sick of problems, all right?
Okay.
We've had Rishi Sunak, we've had Keir Starmer, the Lib Dems. There's no point listening to what they're saying about this particular issue, really. We've had UKIP, OK, already today we've had UKIP. What's your view? Come on, sort it out, fix it.
Well, I prefer what I call the three-pronged approach. The first is an international solution where we call a new convention on the UN refugees, where we work out what is the true definition of an asylum seeker in the modern world and actually start to deal with the definition of illegal migration and allowing countries to opt out of the UN convention when it comes to that. Secondly is a UK version. We must remove ourselves from the European Courts of Human Rights, which tackles two areas of the initial decision claims, which is those people allowed to stay outside of the UN Convention. And thirdly, we need to expand the Rwanda policy to other countries and maybe ships offshore in order to take those people who are arriving and placing them out of the jurisdiction of the UK. That's the three-pronged approach I would take. And all of them could be legally done. And the last can be done now following the court case in December.
Well, Stephen, thank you very much. It's almost like you'd planned it, really, isn't it, that? But I tell you what, it is a fascinating thing. So changing the definition or getting clarification, maybe, on the definition of what exactly an illegal migrant is or what exactly a refugee is, I think a lot of people will be behind that. And that's upstreaming stuff, isn't it? That can be sorted out.
Absolutely.
Getting ourselves out of the ECHR, i.e. taking back control of our laws. You can't say that these days. That sounded like the leader of the opposition, believe it or not, but taking back control of our laws and expanding the Rwanda policy to other countries, plus a little bit of offshore processing as well. I think that will probably prove quite popular with our viewers and listeners. Thank you very much, Stephen Wolfe there.
My pleasure.
Who is the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Get your views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Do you back that? We had UKIP on earlier. They were saying they wanted a complete block on anyone, legal or illegal, when it comes to a genuine asylum seeker or otherwise, I should say, really, when it comes to what's going on in the Channel. Just a complete block, plus basically what she did say, didn't she, disused shipping containers used as accommodation for those people. That was UKIP's plan. We've had Stephen Wolfe on there who says, get us out of the ECHR, change the definition, get clarification on the definition of what it means to be an asylum seeker, a refugee, an illegal immigrant, which would, both of those things would make it easier to deport people as and when, and expand the Rwanda policy and create more offshore processing. So there we go. Your views, ladies and gentlemen, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We're moving on there because this is another fascinating one, actually. Another really fascinating story. I saw this earlier today. New data released by the Office for National Statistics has revealed that 262,000 people in England and Wales have a different gender identity to their sex registered at birth. So I'm going somewhere with this, don't worry. It's taken from the 2021 census, which was answered by more than 45 million people. It's also the first time that the gender and sex question was asked on the national census. Now, the quick maths there, which I am willing to be corrected on, but my understanding is that equates to around 0.5% of the population saying that they have a different gender identity to their sex registered at birth. So 0.5% of people. With me now is Debbie Hayton, transgender teacher and journalist. Debbie, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Happy New Year. Can you still say Happy New Year? It's getting on a bit now, isn't it? It's the 6th. But anyway, Happy New Year. Now, my initial reaction to this was, that's not a lot of people. And whilst we all want people to be cared for and not have abused and all of this stuff, is that a large enough group of people to be seriously looking at changing laws, for example, and all of the consequences that may or may not come with that in terms of women's safety, in terms of the curriculum at schools, all of this stuff? Your views?
Well, it is 0.5%, which you can say is not many, but it's a lot more than the 5,000 people who were thought to be transsexual when the Gender Recognition Act was first passed nearly 20 years ago. You know, this is a large group of people. But the census actually leaves more questions unasked than it answers, because you mentioned 262,000, but of those, there are 48,000 trans men, 47,000 trans women, but 117,000 people who gave no specific gender identity. I do wonder how many of these people are it's the Jedi Knight phenomenon, where people just tick a box. It's there to be ticked. Let's tick a box.
So that's interesting. So actually, I suppose, yes, you're right. There is the possibility that some people have, I don't want to say spoiled their ballot, but whatever the equivalent of that is with this, the Jedi Knight thing, which did bring a smile to my face, actually. So actually, following that logic, then potentially an even smaller percentage of people might be genuinely trans, I suppose, or not recognised as the original sex that they had at birth. And it kind of just lead me back to that initial question, which is, when people see the numbers outlined like that, is it really worthwhile changing laws to accommodate for those people?
Well, we have laws to accommodate us. We're accommodated because we're human beings, the same as everybody else. What people are trying to do is to try and give us extra privileges to choose our sex and change our sex just because we want to. And I'm quite clear in my views that I think that's unhelpful. But as I said, that the data itself that's been released, you have to drill into it quite deeply to actually find some interesting information. It's not listed by sex, so we can't work out how many males and how many females are involved, or by age. But they have released this geographical map. And what's really interesting, when you look at the geographical map of, say, non-binary identities, you can pick out the university towns across the country. They light up on the map. So what this is suggesting to me, my first grasp of this data, was that this is something which correlates with students, with young people, and we need to be asking the question: is this something that people are going to grow out of?
Well, now, that is really fascinating as well. I'm really glad you raised this map, because, yes, I did think that. I must say, when I looked at it, I thought, hang on a minute, there's university towns there, left, right and centre, aren't there? Now, when you say something that they're going to grow out of, the other way of looking at it, dare I say it, is that maybe society is pushing people in a certain direction. Maybe children at schools are being asked questions that children of different generations simply weren't asked. They were asked to be considered whether or not they are born into the wrong body. Do you think that's healthy and helpful?
Well, I don't think it's healthy. I think young people have always struggled with growing up and accepting their bodies and accepting adolescence. And we're suggesting to young people that they can choose whether they want to grow up to be men or women. It's a lie. They can't. But that's the message which they're getting. Now, if that was as far as it went, then we'd be concerned about the mental health issues which that caused, but we all know that there's medicines and drugs which are administered in order to facilitate this attempted change of sex, and this is really dangerous.
And so what we're seeing now, and you're the perfect guest for this because you've absolutely drilled down into it, is it would appear to have a raft of, one would imagine, young adults now, people at universities, etc., who've just come through an increasingly woke education system, who are getting into increasingly woke institutions, i.e. universities now, who are identifying as being a different sex or gender or whatever to the one that they were born as, and potentially on top of that are now actually doing things medically to facilitate their transition. Playing this tape forward, Debbie, are we staring down the barrel of quite a large-scale mental health crisis here down the line, do you think?
We already have a mental health crisis, Patrick, among young people. Young people are struggling in ways that they've never, ways greater than they've ever done before. But by actually telling young people fallacious information, telling them lies that they can choose whether to become men or women, which we know they can't. But young people like to believe what they're told at times. It's idealistic, and we have to build our lives in reality. And at some point, young people have got to grow up, get a job, and perhaps settle down and get married. That's the reality of life.
Debbie, look, thank you very much. And just quickly before I let you get going, Debbie, as well, a lot of love for you in the inbox here. George says that he always finds you very sensible, balanced, and you're a great find. So there you go. Thank you very much. Debbie Hayton there, who's transgender teacher and journalist. I've got some breaking news for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's just dropping right now in front of my eyes. Unite ambulance workers will strike on January the 23rd in their dispute over pay. The union has announced that that's breaking. That's literally just come through right now. Fresh ambulance strikes, they're going to take place on January the 23rd. No doubt we'll be reacting to that in the next hour of this show. It's just coming up to 4 minutes now to 5. Patrick Christys here, GB News. See you in a tick.
Good evening. Many of us have had a dry Friday, but the first weekend of the year will be dominated by showers. Lots of showers, often heavy, coming through on a fairly gusty wind, and it'll start to turn a little cooler as well. Pretty mild tonight, but we're kind of between weather systems, or have been through the day, which is why most of us have been dry. But these weather fronts now edging in from the west are bringing wet conditions. Some quite heavy rain moving across Northern Ireland into Scotland, and particularly for South Wales and South West England. That heavy rain through the early hours could cause a few problems, so we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. Much of eastern England will stay dry overnight, and Northern Ireland will turn dry after midnight. Temperatures actually rising in many places through the night. We start the weekend in double digits. We also start with a fair bit of rain around. Still some heavy rain for Wales and southwest England, especially first thing. That rain will move eastward, so eventually turning up across East Anglia and the southeast during the morning, and then head out into the North Sea. It may linger across the easternmost parts of England and Scotland until around dusk. It'll be followed by drier, brighter weather for a time, and then the showers get going. Lots of heavy showers zipping through on that gusty wind come the afternoon. Temperature actually dropping a little through the afternoon as well, so feeling cooler than it has done, especially with the wind, and especially if you get caught in a downpour, of which there will be plenty more to come through Saturday evening. A showery night. It gets very windy once more in the north of Scotland. That leads into a blustery, gusty day on Sunday with further heavy showers to come, particularly for Wales and southern England. Could be quite a wet day for parts of the southeast. Northeast England, southern Scotland, northeastern Scotland may not see too many showers actually. So here, by and large, it could be a mostly dry day. And there will be sunny spells elsewhere between the showers, but those showers will keep coming on that gusty wind. Temperatures down close to average, but feeling cooler with the wind.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. It's just gone 5 o'clock. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Now, the Duke of Sussex once believed his mother faked her own death in a bid to escape the press. He's told of how he wanted the inquiry into a fatal car crash to be reopened. It's all part of this controversial new memoir, Spare, which also includes, and I think something that we should all care about, him putting us all at risk as far as I'm concerned. Prince Harry has managed to enrage the Taliban. Cheers, Harry. And now, are we all at risk as a result? I'm going to be speaking to someone who's in the know about the terror threat in this country. Really shocking stuff. And disrespecting our Queen, revealing to the nation what he said, what he whispered into her ear just after she died. In other news, our GB News People's Poll revealed 57% of you have no confidence at all in the government's ability to get to grips with what's been going on in the channel. And we've just had news, breaking news, that there's more ambulance strikes this month. Workers from the Unite Union will walk out on January the 23rd. I will bring you more on that as we get it. I've got all of this and much, much more. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Let me know what you're most annoyed about from Harry's book. What bit of what we've told you so far annoys you the most? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Now it's your headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 5. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. A senior Taliban leader has hit back at Prince Harry, saying the militants he claims to have killed in Afghanistan were not chess pieces, they were humans. He was responding to revelations from the Duke of Sussex's memoir, Spare, in which he admits to killing 25 Taliban fighters while he was a helicopter pilot. The book is due to be published next week, but mistakenly went on sale in Spain yesterday. In it, Prince Harry also reveals he found out his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had died via a news website and not from his family. Royal expert Charles Ray says the book could be the end of Harry's relationship with the royal family.
These are machine gun revelations and accusations, and it is staggering that he's come out with all this stuff. I mean, to a point of being disgusting with some of the revelations. I don't believe that Harry's ever going to be forgiven for doing what he's done with this book. I mean, the documentaries and the Oprah Winfrey were bad enough, but this book is way out there, really is.
And some breaking news in the last few minutes. Ambulance members with the union Unite have announced a new strike date on the 23rd of January in a dispute over pay. It's amid rising flu cases and record high ambulance handover delays. Over 40% of patients waited more than half an hour to be transferred to A&E last week, while an average 5,000 flu patients were in hospital. That's up 47% on the previous week. Well, the Prime Minister has invited union leaders to meet with him to discuss pay on Monday. Rishi Sunak says he hopes for a grown-up conversation about what's affordable. It comes as passengers experience the fourth consecutive day of train strikes in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Only 20% of services are operating as normal. Mr Sunak says the government will try and ensure some services continue during industrial action.
We're going to bring forward new laws in common with countries like France, Italy, Spain and others that ensure that we have minimum levels of safety in critical areas like fire, like ambulance, so that even when strikes are going on, you know that your health will be protected. I think that's entirely reasonable, and that's what our new laws will do.
Well, the RMT's General Secretary Mick Lynch says he doesn't think the potential new laws will work.
They've also lost the argument on the existing anti-trade union laws because every union is defeating them by having mass ballots. They want to make the action that comes out of those ballots virtually illegal. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think they understand what they're doing. They keep quoting what goes on in France and Spain and all the rest of the world. These laws have never been enforced in those countries, and they're not enacted in the same way that Grant Shapps is trying to bring in.
Police in Scotland have confirmed names of 2 women and a man who died in a fire at a hotel in Perth. Donna Jantz van Rensburg, Sharon McLean and Keith Russell were killed in the blaze at New County Hotel in the early hours of Monday morning. The 2 women are sisters from Aberdeen and the man was originally from Edinburgh. Donna's 3-year-old King Charles Spaniel also died in the fire. The investigation into the cause is ongoing. The US president will mark the 2nd anniversary of the attack on the US Capitol with an award ceremony at the White House. President Joe Biden will award 12 people with the Presidential Citizens Medal. It's one of the country's highest honours for civilians. It'll be given to law enforcement officers, election workers, state and local officials. It's after a mob of Donald Trump supporters stormed the building in a failed bid to block Congress from certifying the 2020 election. Former Chelsea striker and manager Gianluca Vialli has died from cancer at the age of 58. Vialli earned 59 caps for Italy and won the Champions League with Juventus before joining Chelsea in 1996. He was the first Italian to take charge of a Premier League side, becoming Blues manager in 1998. And the number of independent bookshops in the UK and Ireland has reached a 10-year high. The Booksellers Association says the increase is down to an astonishing number of new books coming out during the pandemic. It's the 6th consecutive year that the number of bookshops has increased. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Patrick.
OK, ladies and gentlemen, now Prince Harry once wanted the inquiry into Princess Diana's death to be reopened, and he also believed she faked her own death. That's according to revelations in his new memoir, Spare, more of which is dropping by the minute, it would seem. Harry also says that both he and his brother, the Prince of Wales, were talked out of calling for a re-investigation into Diana's death by the powers that be. He described how after his mother's death, he was left in Balmoral Castle with nothing to do but roam the hall with a suspicion taking hold that it was all a trick played by Diana. Now, Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace have still maintained their silence. They've declined to comment on the book. There is a lot more for us to talk about when it comes to this book as well. Namely, in my opinion, the most serious element of it is Prince Harry revealing that he killed 25 Taliban fighters, referring to them as chess pieces. I can understand him referring to them as chess pieces. You've got to try to maybe take the emotion out of it. I imagine that a lot of people who see conflict and the horrors of war do something similar, probably through therapy, OK? I get all of that. However, A, it's not the done thing. Anyone who's in the military will tell you do not publish your kill count. B, has it made us all less safe on the streets of Britain? Is it therefore inherently selfish? I suspect Harry's only said it because he wants his security back, paid for him by our royal family, by the taxpayer. He's now created a more dangerous situation for him and his family so that we all have to pay for his very expensive security. That wouldn't surprise me, but I just think it's plain wrong. The Taliban have, well, understandably kicked off about it. Doesn't take too much for them to kick off, though, does it, to be fair? It's the Taliban. However, now I do suspect that it's going to create a more enraged radical Islamist sentiment. Any single one of our armed forces now is more at risk as a result. I would argue that people just walking the streets are more at risk as a result of this. A former serving member of the royal family, someone who was banging lines to the throne, was out there for, at the time, Queen and country, slotting jihadis left, right and centre. How do you think that the radical undertones in this country are going to take to that? Bear in mind we have 7,000 people a year referred to our Prevent scheme. I think it's stupid. I think it's incredibly dangerous what he's done. Another thing, just before we go to our guest, that I know has got a lot of you very angry, it's got me very angry, for a lad who wanted secrecy, privacy and all of this stuff, revealing the words he whispered into our dear Queen's ear as she lay having recently died, I think is just a shocking betrayal and, frankly, disgusting. Really, I really do, and I don't see how there's any way back for him. But I want to know, of course, what winds you up the most about Prince Harry's book. Is it the fact that now we might all have a massive jihadi threat thanks to Harry? That's quite a big one. Is it the fact that he's disrespected our late Queen's memory by revealing what he whispered into her ear? Or is it actually something quite interesting, which is that he's admitted that King Charles used to joke about whether or not he was his dad? With me to talk about this now is royal correspondent Nick Owen. Nick, great stuff. Great to have you on the show. Let's start, if you don't mind. We'll work our way through to the old Diana stuff. But the idea for me that King Charles used to joke about whether or not he was his dad, I mean, we've all done that, haven't we?
Well, I'm not sure about joking, yes, but I mean, let's be honest, he's put it out into the open now, so I suppose we can discuss it rather more clearly than we would have done a few years ago, Patrick. I can remember right back in my time when Harry appeared on the scene when I was a royal correspondent, right back in the 1990s, that, well, is Charles really his father? It was the sort of thing you said to each other as journalists. It was the sort of thing said round tables. It was the sort of thing said in pubs all the time. But it's not the sort of thing you would expect to ever hear from any of the principals themselves, not even in conversation, particularly between themselves, you would have thought, and certainly not in public. I mean, it's astonishing, isn't it? Patrick, listening to you, I mean, what gets me really about all this, there is so much of this stuff pouring in now that it is so difficult to pick out the thing you really, really hate. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure, I can't imagine there are many people now who are saying, oh, poor Harry, poor Harry. I think most people will think most of these things that he's broadcast are pretty terrible to see them out in the open. But go back to this business about his security and all the other things. You got a nice twist on it. I'm not sure I go all the way with you that he's done this in order to make sure he gets security. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. What he should remember is what happened to Salman Rushdie.
Yeah.
These sort of people have very long memories. Very long memories indeed.
Absolutely.
Might not be immediate. It might not happen now, might not happen tomorrow, probably won't. The rest of his life, he's going to have to be looking more and more over his shoulder and his family and his children and everything else. I mean, that to me is, makes me quite cross. It almost makes me go,
Look, in a familial sense, if I was Meghan, right, or any of Harry's kids, I think you're absolutely spot on. Now, unequivocally, for the rest of their lives, they will have to be looking over their shoulder. You raise a cracking example there of Salman Rushdie. You are never safe with this lot. The Taliban, who are in control of Afghanistan and have their horrible little jihadi tentacles spread out right across the world, along with a load of other terror groups, are calling for Prince Harry to be tried for war crimes. That will resonate with anyone who's got an Islamist bent in their mind, anywhere in the world, of which, unfortunately, we have a lot of domestic ones in this country, certainly in America or wherever Harry decides to go. And actually, he has endangered his own family, hasn't he? Like an idiot.
Well, that's what I'm that's what I'm saying. I think that is probably the case. Yeah, I mean, to take that one example, and also I'd pick up and absolutely agree with you about this thing that I've been talking to people today with military connections, military people. My father served in the Royal Navy during the war and so on. You know, I think we all, if you've not been in the military yourself, I haven't been in the military, but I know a lot of people who have, and I've got friends who are and have been. The one thing you don't talk about, you don't say, I killed 25 people, you know. No, I mean, it's just... sorry, but I'm getting a bit sort of up in the air here like you are. But it is extraordinary, isn't it?
I'm going to move away from the Taliban stuff because later on we're going to be talking to someone from the armed forces as well to give his view. But, I mean, from what I can gather, the only type of people who tend to go around boasting about how many people they've killed or talking about it are usually the welter mitties anyway. But in terms of what's been going on when Prince Harry found out the Queen was ill. Now, this, I think, is fascinating. I've not spoken about it a huge amount so far on this show, so keen to get your take. When the Queen was dying, I should say, and supposedly Harry had the option to go on a plane with William and a few other members of the royal family, there was some disagreement as to whether or not Meghan would be allowed to come. He then got on his own plane, only found out about the Queen's death, as he puts it, on his phone from a news outlet. Is it, seriously, the idea now that Prince Harry's blind love for Meghan cost him the opportunity to go and pay his respects to the Queen along with the rest of his family? I mean, is that really where he's at?
Well, I think he comes at it at a slightly different angle, doesn't it? I mean, his argument is that he wasn't well informed enough about what was really going on, and also, importantly, that his father King Charles, as he now is, was adamant that Meghan could not be there. And he then misread that, he says, as an attack on Meghan. It was only later that he said, oh, well, when he got to Balmoral finally in a terrible fluster, and as one can understand that, his father actually said to him, oh, it's only because I didn't want so many people around. It wasn't anything else. And he said, oh, well, why didn't you say that in the first place, I said to my father. I mean, this is the stuff of sort of, I mean, at a time in any family, are you really going to sort of dwell on who said what first to so-and-so? You might have a little bit of a spat about it, then you move straight on, don't you? You put it away in your mind and use it in a book that the whole world is now reading. Are you really going to do that? I mean...
There's something really ironic about the fact that I find this with a lot of people who claim to be, you know, the real lovey-dovey, wokey types, that actually they tend to be some of the most narcissistic and introspective. And I think Prince Harry is no exception to that. King Charles had just lost his mother, right? And Harry is saying, why didn't you give me a more full explanation in text messages to why my wife, who, let's be honest, a lot of people hate, wasn't allowed to come and stand next to the Queen that she showed absolutely zero respect for in a lot of cases in her final moments. I mean, Harry, really? Is that where we are, seriously? I mean, look, I suppose the overarching question is it game over now for Harry? Should he actually come back for the coronation? Should he dare to show his face?
Well, listen, Patrick, I'm not sure I go along with everything you say, and that's fine. I would argue, actually, I think from what I have read that Meghan's attempts to show respect for the Queen, I think she did. I take your point that a lot of people seem to hate her, but I don't think they should hate her particularly for the way she tried to get on with the Queen and so on. But is there a way back? I have been saying from the very beginning, I have been on your station right from the very beginning when the very first few things came, when the Oprah Winfrey came out. I said, I don't think there's any way back. And now, you know, the doors are shutting and shutting and shutting. The bridges are burnt, or whatever the right expressions are, the boats are whatever. I can't see that there's a way back for Harry. He doesn't want a way back, does he? He clearly does not. But how much is he prepared to sort of drag down? And don't forget, we've got television interviews still to come. Presumably we're going to get even more stuff in them. It's got such a long way to run. I hear people saying, "Oh, well, I'm bored with this stuff already." You know, attention spans in the modern era are very short, and so on. But Harry is proving amazing at coming up with. Well, he's a military man. Can I say grenade after grenade? And you know the terrible thing about grenades, you got to be jolly careful that when you pull the pin out, you throw it far enough. Otherwise, you're the one who gets damaged.
Just lastly, a bit of a cheeky one to finish, Nicholas, if you don't mind. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. When do you reckon the autobiography or the account in the Daily Star, at least, is going to come out of the lady who apparently did have a rather good time with Prince Harry in a field behind a pub?
Oh, dear. Do you know, when I heard that, I just thought, Harry, please spare us at least that. At least the one thing we do not want to hear about, you know.
Yeah, exactly that. For our radio listeners, he's putting his fingers in his ears, and I don't blame him. Nicholas, thank you very much. Nicholas Owen there, royal correspondent, just talking about the young stallion that is Prince Harry. Right, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on the Prince Harry revelations. We're going to go into that inbox now. Scott says, the fact that he's not only put himself at risk, but us too, is selfish. Now, Scott is reacting to something that is my main bugbear with the Prince Harry book, apart from the fact that I know, and I know that a lot of you are getting in touch on this, it does also annoy me that I have to sit here and talk this much about Prince Harry. Yes, I get that, but it is the news. And actually, if you realistically go outside and go down the pub, everyone's talking about it there. So we do have to hold a mirror up to that, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? But I am annoyed that Prince Harry has come out and said that he slotted 25 jihadis in Afghanistan, mainly, not because of the loss of the jihadis, couldn't care less. In fact, well done, Harry. However, I am annoyed that now he's possibly put a target, not just on his back and his family's back, more members of the royal family's back. He's enraged a group of radical Islamists who, frankly, already didn't wish us any harm, did they? So thank you very much for that, Harry. He's opened the hornet's nest yet again, so much so that the actual leaders of the Taliban have come out and talked about it. What I do find quite humorous, though, in all of this, and it is important to see a little bit of levity in something so serious, I think, is that Prince Harry has managed to unite both many people on the right wing of this country and the Taliban in disliking him. There we go. Barbara says, get the older woman who took his virginity to write a book. Absolutely, Barbara, 100%. I cannot wait for the silhouetted, the blacked out silhouette of a woman's head, the robotic voice to protect her identity as she reveals all about what happened in that field behind a pub garden. I mean, yes, it's got Daily Star written all over it, and you love to see it. Simon says, hey, see what he did there? But Simon says, I cannot think of a more stupid move than his confession to the Taliban kills. As an ex-serviceman myself, I do not publicly criticise the royal family. I am aware there could be a higher threat to them and servicemen, but the really crazy thing that he has achieved is to effectively put a target on his back, here we go, and indirectly on the backs of his wife and children. 100%. Now, an interesting point on this as well, which is that once he's got all this bile out of his system, and once Meghan has presumably written her book as well, I can't help but wonder, when the Hollywood lovey elites start to turn against Harry and they go, TMI, Harry, we did not need to know about your romp behind a pub somewhere near your school. We did not need to know about you whispering into your dead nan's ear in the moments after her death. Maybe this is a bit distasteful. When the people who Meghan really cares about, i.e. the Hollywood chatterati, when those people, when Oprah goes cold on them, when Beyoncé goes cold on them, that is when all of a sudden, oh, sorry, I gave it a go, Harry, but would you mind just signing this divorce paper for me? You're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Unite ambulance workers will stage further strike action this month. Unite said its ambulance members will walk out on January the 23rd. The union said it will work with local trusts to ensure life and limb emergency cover. So that's the breaking news. That's the ambulance strikes. We'll give you the very latest on that. But first, well, I've got a bit of weather for you.
Good evening. Many of us have had a dry Friday, but the first weekend of the year will be dominated by showers. Lots of showers, often heavy, coming through on a fairly gusty wind, and it'll start to turn a little cooler as well. Pretty mild tonight, but we're kind of between weather systems, or have been through the day, which is why most of us have been dry. But these weather fronts now edging in from the west are bringing wet conditions. Some quite heavy rain moving across Northern Ireland into Scotland, and particularly for South Wales and South West England. That heavy rain through the early hours could cause a few problems, so we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. Much of eastern England will stay dry overnight, and Northern Ireland will turn dry after midnight. Temperatures actually rising in many places through the night. We start the weekend in double digits. We also start with a fair bit of rain around. Still some heavy rain for Wales and southwest England, especially first thing. That rain will move eastward, so eventually turning up across East Anglia and the southeast during the morning, and then head out into the North Sea. It may linger across the easternmost parts of England and Scotland until around dusk. It'll be followed by drier, brighter weather for a time, and then the showers get going. Lots of heavy showers zipping through on that gusty wind come the afternoon. Temperatures actually dropping a little through the afternoon as well, so feeling cooler than it has done, especially with the wind, and especially if you get caught in a downpour, of which there will be plenty more to come through Saturday evening. A showery night. It gets very windy once more in the north of Scotland. And that leads into a blustery, gusty day on Sunday with further heavy showers to come, particularly for Wales and southern England. Could be quite a wet day for parts of the southeast. Northeast England, southern Scotland, northeastern Scotland may not see too many showers actually. So here, by and large, it could be a mostly dry day. And there will be sunny spells elsewhere between the showers, but those showers will keep coming on that gusty wind. Temperatures down close to average, but feeling cooler with the wind.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
OK, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, very shortly, I'm going to be talking about these ambulance strikes, but just to let you in on a little bit of the behind-the-scenes stuff here at GB News, we were hoping that we might be able to get a few of you, our lovely viewers, normal people, ordinary people, men, women, everything in between, actually on the telly. We do like to have you on the telly in a visual sense, not just reading out the emails. The original plan was for me to film some kind of quite slick promotional video to get you all on. We forgot to do that, and so now I'm just going to do it live on air. Get yourself on the telly. If you want to be on my show, then what you can do is email in, and in the subject line of your email, I want you to put me on the telly, OK? Email in gbviews@gbnews.uk and give me the topic that you want to talk about, preferably if it's something that's in the news any given day. Leave your details on it, your number, your name, where you're from, and one of my producers might give you a call, and you can get yourself on the telly. So put in the subject line, put me on the telly. Right, that was slick as ever. Fantastic stuff. No expense spared here. Moving on. Unite ambulance workers will strike on January the 23rd in their dispute over pay. The union has announced in the last hour, so a bit of breaking news-ish. The British Medical Association has also confirmed it will ballot junior doctors on Monday on possible strike action in March, when their current payment agreement is due to end. Joining me now is Lucy Johnson, Health and Social Affairs Editor of the Sunday Express, friend of the show. I think I have seen you since New Year. Happy New Year anyway, if I haven't, but there we go. Right, OK, so fresh strike action on the 23rd of January. What will happen?
Well, we've got, as you say, two things happening. 23rd of January, we've got ambulances uniting, to agree to a strike on that day. Is coming at a critical and perilous time for the NHS. In fact, announced today, we've got another 26% rise in excess deaths happening above the 5-year average. So a lot of people are blaming that on the collapse of the emergency care system. So really it is a critical time, and it's coming at a real, probably one of the worst times in the NHS's history. So that's the ambulances. They say that they'll cover emergency calls, but obviously with many on strike, we're already seeing people lying for up to 4 days without care, without being admitted. So it's going to cause even more disruption. The junior doctors are going to ballot, so that's a separate thing. We won't know the results of that for some weeks. But, it's widely known that there's a great popularity and they are likely to go ahead with strike action.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come on to the junior doctors thing, actually. I'm glad you've raised it. But just a bit of context for people. What have ambulance workers been offered? Because clearly they're not happy with it, which is why they're thinking about fresh strikes. And the reason why I care so much is that it means people will die.
Well, in fact, people are already dying. And the problem is that Steve Barclay is not coming to the table. So he can, it looks as if he's being really intransigent, and it will go back to the old arguments. He's blaming ambulance staff for increasing the likelihood of patients suffering dangerous waits, coming to harm and dying. And ambulance staff are at the same time blaming him for not coming to the table. And in a way, one could argue, actually, if you're the health secretary, you should get there on the table and not leave negotiations until this is sorted out, because the people that are coming to harm are patients.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I'm just having a quick look at this. Supposedly, the offer that they've got at the minute is £1,400, a flat rate offer, which equates to around a 4% pay rise for ambulance staff. This includes people like paramedics, call handlers, all of that stuff. As we know, they want something, supposedly, more in terms of inflation, which I've got here anyway, is about 10.7%. It changes, but there we go. Which clearly there is a gulf there. But I think, you know, I watched an episode of The Apprentice last night. You can do a deal on that, can't you?
I'm sure, and that's the point. Steve Barclay's not prepared to even open up pay negotiations, and I'm sure you could come to some deal. The other thing, you know, when you talk to paramedics, when you talk to ambulance staff, and even doctors as well, I think they talk about pay, but actually a lot of the problems are in their dissatisfaction with the working conditions, and the working conditions are due to a whole range of factors, which we've talked about before. But, you know, if they can give them something and give them, you know, ideas about more perks and, you know, promises to increase beds or whatever, there's always room for manoeuvre. But if you're not talking, then there's not.
No, there's not. Now, junior doctors. Now, this is interesting because I am concerned that junior doctors in this country who are thinking of going on strike, the other story with this is that a lot of them are saying, at least threatening, to go and work abroad. Now, I wonder, I don't expect you to have the answer to this, by the way, but if you do, it would be great, whether or not, if somebody trains here and takes out a loan here for our university system to become a junior doctor and then decides they go to Australia, I don't know whether or not they have to pay that back, which just seemed like a little bit of a burden on the British taxpayer, and that seems a little bit run. But junior doctors are saying that they are basically not paid enough, and I believe they go on a sliding scale from around £29,000 a year to around £60,000 a year. If you then go on to specialise and branch out, you can find yourself on a decent amount of money. Is it that bad?
Well, if you look at the actual figures of numbers of doctors leaving, and I had a quick look at this before I came on, I think it's around 2%. The surveys that are done by the BMA show that 1 in 3 roughly are thinking of leaving. I know that apparently you can earn twice as much in Australia and do less hours. So there's a bit of a, you know, there is a pull. But at the same time, you know, if the government is paying you to train here and you're invested in the system, there could be some moral obligation to fulfil that. Secondly, what you also need to think about is looking sort of under the graph, that within 5 years, you're going to be earning a whole lot more. By the time you get to consultant level, you'll be on three-figure salary with a platinum pension and a lot of study leave and holiday. So it's not just the junior doctor stage that you need to look at. At the same time, you know, inflation is running high, and you know, we're all suffering from that.
No, 100%. We are all suffering, and in any line of work, pretty much, you do have to start somewhere near the bottom and work your way up, and hopefully over the course of your career, after a lot of hard work, you will end up on a decent wedge. I know it's not the same for everybody, but that seems to be the natural order of things, and it doesn't seem fair to me that junior doctors should feel as though they have to skip that. I also do think, and I want to get more detail on this, so I will endeavour to find out by the next time I come on air on Monday, whether or not, if you are a junior doctor who gets a student loan in this country to train in this country, and you then decide to work abroad, do you then still have to pay your loan back or not? Because if you don't, it seems a bit cheeky, if you ask me. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. That's Lucy Johnson there, Health and Social Affairs editor at the Sunday Express. Great to have you on. Right, loads of you have been emailing in. It's coming in thick and fast. We're going to be talking about it relentlessly because we've got Prince Harry compromised not just his own security, but our security. He's claimed he killed 25 Taliban fighters on his second tour of Afghanistan. The Taliban, well, they're raging, let me tell you. I never thought that a book would actually incite some kind of tweet diplomacy by the Taliban, but they've kicked right off. And actually, I think that you and I are all less safe as a result. We've got all of that coming your way, plus the results of our People's Poll. We've been trying to come up with solutions to the Channel migrant crisis today, ladies and gentlemen. I will reveal as well to you, in case you are just joining us, how much it costs to deport someone who's just come across the Channel. Get your figures in mind. I'll reveal all after the latest headlines.
Patrick, thank you. It's 5:30. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. Ambulance members with the union Unite have announced a new strike date on the 23rd of January in a dispute over pay. More than 2,600 staff across the West Midlands, North West, North East, East Midlands and Wales will walk out for 24 hours. The union said it will work with local trusts to ensure emergency care is properly covered. The announcement comes amid rising flu cases and record-high ambulance handover delays. Well, the Prime Minister has invited union leaders to meet with him to discuss pay on Monday. Rishi Sunak says he hopes for a grown-up conversation about what's affordable. It comes as passengers experience the fourth consecutive day of train strikes in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. A senior Taliban leader has hit back at Prince Harry, saying the militants he claims to have killed in Afghanistan were not chess pieces, they were humans. He was responding to revelations from the Duke of Sussex's memoir, Spare, in which he admits to killing 25 Taliban fighters as a helicopter pilot. Prince Harry also reveals he found out his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had died via a news website and not from his family. Royal expert Charles Ray says the book could be the end of Harry's relationship with the royal family.
These are machine gun revelations and accusations, and it is staggering that he's come out with all this stuff. I mean, to a point of being disgusting with some of the revelations. I don't believe that Harry's ever going to be forgiven for doing what he's done with this book. I mean, the documentaries and the Oprah Winfrey were bad enough, but this book is way out there, really is.
Police in Scotland have named 2 women and a man who died in a fire at a hotel in Perth. Donna Jantz van Rensburg and Sharon McLean and Keith Russell were killed in the blaze at New County Hotel in the early hours of Monday morning. The 2 women are sisters from Aberdeen and the man was originally from Edinburgh. Donna's 3-year-old King Charles Spaniel also died. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Patrick will be back with you in just a moment.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Has Prince Harry put us all at risk? A Taliban spokesperson has called on Prince Harry to face a trial for war crimes. Well, good luck with that, but still, it's not ideal, is it? That's after he claimed he killed 25 Taliban fighters on his second tour of Afghanistan. Now, describing his time in the military, the Duke of Sussex said he saw enemy combatants as chess pieces on a board that had to be taken out. But the revelation has been greeted with consternation from some military figures. They say statements like this make us all less secure, they make our armed forces less secure, they make his family less secure, and frankly, it's all a bit of a shocker. Also, as well, crucially, it's not the done thing, is it? People in the military don't tend to reveal their kill count. With me now is Colonel Richard Kemp, former British Army commander. Great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. Am I less safe on the streets of Britain as a result of Prince Harry?
I don't think so, no, not really. What I do think, though, is that his suggestion that the British treats its enemy as less than human beings, just chess pieces on the board to be brushed aside, that helps the jihadists. It helps them to radicalise, recruit and gain funding for their attacks. So we're not made safer by it, and potentially there is a slightly increased risk because they're being aided by words that Prince Harry's using. And the Taliban, as you've mentioned, has already seized upon that and accused Harry as war crimes, when in fact they're the war criminals.
We know we have around 7,000 people every single year in this country referred to prevent for a variety of different extremist views, it must be said. The vast majority of them Islamist. We know that we have homegrown terror. We know that there is a very real threat out there. Why on earth would Prince Harry decide to reveal this and stoke the Taliban's hornet's nest, unless he is just especially thick?
Well, he's not revealing it. What he's doing is he's telling something other than the truth about it. I wouldn't say he's lying about it, but the way he described British military operations and training is wrong. It's false. But it certainly will, I think, incite some of these jihadists that you mentioned to be more inclined to carry out attacks. I don't think there's much doubt about that. And why is he doing it? Well, I think it's a grave misjudgment. Maybe it sells more books or something. I don't know, but it's not a sensible thing to do, and it's also very gives a very misleading impression about the British Army.
Yeah, it does indeed. And just on the British Army, OK, look, my focus so far, the vast majority of it, has been on your average, normal civilian man and woman on the streets, OK? But will it make members of our armed forces less safe, potentially? Will they be seen as more legitimate targets now, in your view?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll have less effect on them. It'll have more effect on the man and the woman on the street, because they're the ones who generally get targeted by jihadists over here. And we've seen that in a number of attacks, many of which have been described as motivated by themselves and motivated by the presence of the British forces in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the way that we treat Afghans and Iraqis, their brother Muslims. And this feeds into that, stokes that. But I don't think it's going to have a big personal security effect on anyone in the military or former, apart from Prince Harry himself.
Should Prince Harry still be involved with things like the Invictus Games, do you think, after this?
I think that's the best thing he can do. I think if he maybe changes his focus and concentrates his efforts on helping wounded servicemen, which he's proved to be so good at in the past, that would be a good way for him to, I think, go forward. He's been denied all his formal military appointments, quite rightly, when he stepped down from being a working royal. But I think, I don't think this places him beyond the pale. And, his reputation now, I think, among former servicemen and troops as well, has probably been a bit tarnished. But they're not going to turn around and say, well, he shouldn't help out with the wounded. I think he should, and I think that's where he should do. That's the way he can do the best good, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. I used to get a lot of emails in from people who were in the armed forces who, look, quite legitimately would say, well, actually, this guy has had 2 tours of Afghanistan. He is a veteran. He deserves our respect. And by the way, I think he does. And I think anyone who goes out there and does anything like that deserves an incredible amount of respect, serving at the time, of course, Queen and country. And it is heroic stuff, and it is very, very brave, and he's been willing to put his life on the line physically for this country. And I get to sit here in a nice, warm, safe studio. I don't ever do anything like that. So credit where credit is due. But my concern is now that a lot of people maybe will be quite angry about this, not least the Taliban, and that is obviously a worry for people. Radical Islamist extremism, we don't need any excuse to give them a little bit of a shot in the arm, do we? But can I ask, when you hear about him revealing his kill counts, That's not really the done thing in the military, is it? Why not?
Well, it's not really, not publicly speaking. I think you know, you will get soldiers talking about how many they've killed, when they've killed them, wounded them, etc., between themselves privately. That's often the subject of discussion, and quite often the subject of exaggeration as well, as you can imagine. But no, it's not. I don't think it's really the thing if you're a Brit to be bragging about how many enemy you've killed. I don't think you'd find very many veterans of the First or Second World War standing up and saying, "Oh, I killed this, I killed that." I think it's, you know, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's, in fact, I think it's something to take pride in. If you're a soldier and have killed the enemy, that's what you're paid to do. But there is, you know, it does leave a little bit of a bad taste, I think, standing up and giving a precise body count.
Can I just ask you finally on this? Do you think this is the kind of thing that should have been run past the MOD before it was published?
Well, normally when a book is published which discusses military operations, recent military operations, it has to be approved by the Ministry of Defence before it can be published. I don't know if this was run past them or not. I've got no idea. But obviously, I mean, certainly as far as I'm aware, nothing that he says in it would be censorable by the MOD. It's only if there's some military secrets being revealed that they would ask him to take it out. Nothing like that is in this book as far as I'm aware.
OK, well, look, thank you very much. Colonel Richard Kemp there, former British Army commander, reacting anyway to this idea, at least, that we are now less safe on the streets of Britain as a result of Prince Harry's comments. He's saying how many people, Taliban fighters, he's killed. The Taliban are angry about it. My massive concern with this, of course, is the idea that we are less safe. And we've had a couple of different military voices on this, a sliding scale when it comes to the increased threat or otherwise that we do now face on the streets of Britain. My view on it would be, well, we're certainly not more safe. Are we, as a result of Harry enraging the Taliban? And we know that the Islamist threat in this country is vast. We unfortunately have a lot of homegrown terror. And is it now even more legitimate? My other area on this is that if you were Meghan Markle or indeed any of Harry's children now, you will have to have lifetime security, increased lifetime security. Look at what happened to Salman Rushdie, for goodness sake. Prince Harry has to be especially idiotic if he thought... Now, I mean, there'll be fatwas taken out on his immediate family, left, right and centre. It's a good job, isn't it, that he fled to California for a bit of peace and quiet. Anyway, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on Prince Harry and, as well, the migrant crisis in the Channel. We've been trying to come up with some solutions to that because 57% of you said that you didn't think that Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer would be able to do anything about it. We had UKIP on earlier and we also had Stephen Wolfe, who's an expert in this particular field, floating their solutions. I'll start with the Harry stuff. Susie says Harry's attempt to alleviate his pain is having terrible repercussions on his family and now all of us. What's the point in him having a therapist if he feels the need to keep spilling all this baggage to the world? It must be because he's getting paid a lot of money. Well, I imagine it is that he's paid a lot of money, actually, Susie. But what I will say as well is I reckon this book was almost written by a therapist. You've got some wacky, kooky, woo-woo person somewhere in California telling him to get it all out there and meditate while he does it and light one of Gwyneth Paltrow's candles and all of this stuff. It will make you feel better. It will alleviate you of your burden. We will get to, in the case of the lady behind a pub somewhere near the Eton area, of course, get full frontal Harry. Well, actually, is it not now endangering us all and also just roping us all into it? I would argue, as well, creating a lot more heat for William and Kate. Kate's been forgotten in all of this, bless her. She's now got to deal with all of this. People are, of course, annoyed, aren't they, that he's raking up Diana's death yet again, saying that he thought that they should reinvestigate it, and that was, of course, all blocked by men in suits, by the Secret Service, it would appear anyway. Look, I'm going to move on to the migrant stuff. I think that is more than enough of Harry for one show. Yeah, a sigh of relief from the nation there. Rishi Sunak has made 5 key promises this week in his first speech of 2023 to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce the national debt, cut NHS waiting lists and, apparently, finally deliver on stopping the small boats from illegally crossing the Channel. This was the only bit of his promises that had any kind of jeopardy to them whatsoever, because all of the other stuff was probably going to happen whether or not he was there or not. So you'd think the migrant crisis is one of his top priorities. He's said again and again that he will pass new laws to stop small boats, making sure that if illegal migrants come to this country, they are detained and swiftly removed. But can he actually solve this? It's been something that the government has been trying to tackle for years, and over half of you, 57%, say absolutely not. You have no confidence that he can deliver on this. I am going to go to my next guest now, who is Kevin Saunders, who's former Chief Immigration Officer at UK Border Force. I've also got Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming on the show. Kevin, I'll start with you, and I want to put to you a combination of two policy ideas that I had pitched to me live on air earlier on. One of them was a complete block on anyone, genuine asylum seeker or otherwise, making their way across the Channel for 5 years so that we could look after the people we already have here. There was also getting us out of the ECHR, changing the international definition of what an illegal immigrant or a refugee is, expanding our Rwanda policy to other countries, and increasing and implementing, I should say, offshore processing, i.e. boats in the Channel. That was the solutions that I had from both UKIP and Stephen Wolfe earlier on. Do you think that would make any sense, Kevin?
Yes, make a lot of sense, actually. The problem that you've got, the big problem that you've got, it's all very well to say we are going to stop people coming across the Channel, but at the present moment we can't. So what you've got to look at is what you do with the people that you pick up in the Channel. Now, I've been ridiculed in some of the press for suggesting that we use cruise liners in the middle of the Channel in international waters. That would work. That would work perfectly well.
Yeah.
So that's something that I would go for.
I'm just going to stop you there, Kevin. Just quickly, Kevin, I'm sorry about this. It's just that the audio is a little bit crackly, so I know we're just going to work on that very quickly, and I'll go back to you, if that's all right. Ben Habib, I'll throw it your way now. He's former Brexit Party MEP, Ben Habib. Ben, I read with some interest. I promised our viewers and listeners I would reveal this a bit later on for people who weren't listening earlier on in the show. The cost of deporting an illegal immigrant is £8,000 per person. Now, this is being billed as a staggering waste of taxpayers' money. Yes, it could be cheaper. If we had more people on the planes, it would cost less per flight, wouldn't it? But it pales into insignificance when you look at what it costs us to put this lot in 4-star hotels and then release them into our public services in our community, surely.
Absolutely. But the point, I think, about the £8,000 per head on the flight is that it's an entirely theoretical figure, because you've actually got to get them on a plane. And that plane's got to take off, and you've got to have a massive number of planes to even make a dent in the number of people coming across the Channel. And, you know, I know Kevin and I both want to stop this problem, but I think Kevin and the suggestions you came up with earlier are slightly seeing it the wrong way round. This isn't an issue about needing new laws or ditching the ECHR or indeed having a cruise ship in international waters. The problem with the cruise ship idea is that the minute you bring an illegal migrant onto a ship that carries a British flag, they are protected by British laws, and therefore they're protected not just by the ECHR, but our own human rights laws, which by the way, for viewers who are not familiar with this, apply on an individual by individual basis. There's no blanket judicial process that you can put these illegal migrants through. Every case has to be heard independently. And so there's no way of resolving this problem through deportation. And I think I've said this to you before, Patrick. The way we've got to stop this is by stopping the boats coming into British territorial waters in the first place. There are perfectly valid existing international laws that allow us to do that. And we need Border Force, and forgive me, Kevin, if this is treading on your toes, but we need Border Force to do its job, not to act as a taxi service, but to push these boats back into French waters.
OK, well, that's a good point. That's a good point to throw it back to Kevin, who is now back with us. Now, Kevin, I interrupted you at what sounded like a very vital moment. You were about to give me the solution to the migrant crisis, but there was a bit of crackling on the line. What were you going to say?
Yes, some of what your other guest says is right. You can't use a British flagged vessel, but we don't have we have virtually no British flagged vessels anymore. So that finding cruise liners that are not British flagged wouldn't be a problem. So that would work. But the trouble is, we can't stop the people coming across the Channel. We can't push them back. Border Force have already said that they won't do it. It's just too dangerous in the Channel, and we can't have any more people dying in the Channel. So what you've got to do is you've got to make the United Kingdom, you've got to make it so people don't want to come here. Now, the only way to do that is to bring in the Rwanda scheme And my sources tell me that there are other East African countries which will jump on the bandwagon once Rwanda is kicked off.
OK, well, that all sounds rather positive, unless, of course, you are an illegal immigrant, in which case it's terrible news. You will be in East Africa before tea time, apparently. Ben, I'll throw it over to you. Just a final word to you, Ben. Our People's poll revealed that 57% of people don't believe that either the Tories or Labour will have any way whatsoever, any will of clamping down on what's been going on in the Channel. This presumably means that a new party has to come and do it. Where is that new party, Ben?
Well, there is a new party that is flexing its muscles and doing rather well in the polls at the moment. And, you know, Richard Tice does have a very coherent plan on this, which, by the way, does involve intercepting these boats in the water and pushing them back. I hear what Kevin says, that it's dangerous, but I disagree that we don't have a right to do it. These people are putting their own lives in danger. They're the ones who are willfully making a decision to take that dangerous journey across from France to us. They're already in a safe country, and we have all the requisite international law on our side to push these boats back into their waters. We talk about being tough on them once they get to the UK. What kind of message does it give when Border Force is acting as a free taxi service? That is, from the word go, you've lost the battle. So any plan which is based on deportation is going to fail.
It's a shame, and I'm absolutely certain as well that Border Force don't enjoy doing it. Both of you, thank you very much. Really good stuff there to react to two big things when it comes to the Channel migrant crisis there. Did you know that apparently, anyway, it costs around £8,000 to deport someone, right? Which a lot of people initially say that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. It's not exactly your Ryanair flight to Malaga, is it? But at the same time, it costs a heck of a lot more to keep them here in hotels with bed and board, released out into a community where maybe they're at the lower end of the social housing scheme or whatever. And yes, that news that 57% of you do not think that Rishi Sunak will be able to get to grips with what's going on in the Channel, which, bearing in mind, he said he's going to stop it all. Well, not boding well for Rishi at the next election, is it? Thank you very, very much to both of those people. Right, up next is Jubes & Co. Michelle Dewberry, who's here in the studio. Michelle, what's coming up?
Hello, Patrick. Yeah, by the way, I was in Hull for Christmas and I passed one of those migrant hotels, a 4-star boutique hotel, by the way. Very nice it used to be too. It was very surreal seeing it in its current form, I have to say. Anyway, coming up on my show tonight, the anti-strike laws, so they're being called. Good idea or not? Firefighter and proud trade unionist Paul Embry, I suspect, will have a few thoughts on that. He joins me tonight, as does Alex Dean. I also want to get into the Elgin marbles. Why not on a Friday? Is it time to give them back or not? 250,000 people say that they don't identify as the same gender. Yeah. What's going on? And also, I do try and avoid it, mainly because I find it ridiculous. But Prince Harry, what on earth is going on?
I'm going to be going to bed tonight dreaming of Prince Harry, a little bit like an elder woman outside a pub garden who's obsessed with stallions, apparently, but there we go. Right, look, thank you, Michelle. It'll be an absolute rip-roarer. Have a look at those university towns, by the way, as well, when it comes to those trans numbers. Fascinating stuff. Bleak picture for the future of Britain, I suspect. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone who's stuck with me this week. Have a fantastic weekend and enjoy Michelle's show, Jubes & Co. Coming your way next. Take it easy.
Good evening. Many of us have had a dry Friday, but the first weekend of the year will be dominated by showers. Lots of showers, often heavy, coming through on a fairly gusty wind, and it'll start to turn a little cooler as well. Pretty mild tonight, but we're kind of between weather systems, or have been through the day, which is why most of us have been dry. But these weather fronts now edging in from the west are bringing wet conditions. Some quite heavy rain moving across Northern Ireland into